Hello and welcome to Paizo Live. My name is Aaron Shanks and I am Paizo's marketing and media manager. Today is Friday, the 22nd of April, 2022, and you have joined us for our 2 hour show called Paizo Live, in which we get to interview Paizo staff members and guests about all the amazing Pathfinder and Starfinder products coming your way. This is our, while we are usually a monthly show, this is our last show before PaizoCon. There won't be a show in May. So we've loaded up with a lot of products that are coming your way in the next 2 months. The great news that I have to share with everyone is that for the last 2 months, despite international shipping chaos, everything has successfully arrived in the warehouse. So everything that you will see on the Paizo release schedule, if you go down to paizo.com at the footer, there's a release schedule, and it talks about what you can expect in April and what you can expect for May. Those are in the warehouse. That's going to happen. And so we today are going to talk about a Paizo adventure path that's starting, a new rule book that's launching, a new setting book that's coming your way in May, and then we're going to switch. We're going to take a break and talk about Starfinder and the new hardcover rule book that's coming your way in late May. And then take another break and talk about organized play and Pathfinder Society and Starfinder Society. So, I've got almost 60 slides of amazing Paizo art to show you. So it's going to be fun. Sorry we started a little late, but it's going to be worth your time. So let's get things started with our guest, Vanessa Hoskins. Vanessa, please join me.
Hi.
Hello. Hi.
Hello.
Vanessa is a frequent author around these parts. We're talking Western slang the entire time, given our adventure path, and also
That's right.
our PaizoCon guest of honor um, for PaizoCon. So, welcome, Vanessa. Thank you for
Thank
joining
you so
us.
much for having me. Yeah, this is really fun.
And
Like we got to do a
what are
quest and
some?
squash a bunch of glitch goblins, and now we get to talk,
We
to
did.
everyone.
There were
This is fun.
gremlins. So many gremlins. So many gremlins. What are some of the things that so I would just describe you as a uh, um, frequent freelance author for Paizo
hmm
in both Pathfinder and Starfinder. What are some of the titles that folks might be familiar with that you've had the opportunity to contribute to?
Well, the most recent one and the one we're going to talk about today is the first book in Outlaws of Alkenstar called Punks in a Powder Keg. Previous to that, I wrote book 2 of the Abomination Vaults 3-part series. And that one is Hand of the Devil. And I got to be squished right between two amazing authors, James Jacobs on one side and Stephen Randy McFarlane on the other. So that was really cool to be part of that trio. Before that, I had a Starfinder AP I'm blanking. You got me blanking.
Oh,
um,
it'll come back to us.
it'll come back to us. Um, the Cradle Infestation,
Oh
which was
yes.
part of that like spooky X-Files series. So yeah. And way back in the day, if you're like a diehard Pathfinder First Edition PFS player, I'm the one who wrote from the Tome of Righteous Repose that completely build your own adventure. So
Wonderful. You've
yeah.
been with us on the journey.
Oh yes.
So let's dive in and talk about Outlaws of Alkenstar.
Yep.
For those who might not have heard about it, this is one of our adventure paths in which a soft cover volume is sent to you once a month, and this adventure path will be told over the course of 3 volumes. It starts at level 1 and I believe goes to level 10. That's traditionally how we do it.
I think that's the goal.
And of
Yeah.
course, yeah, that's the goal. So, Punks in a Powder Keg, there we go. This is the first volume of the 3. And you saw the cover art there on the screen.
Yeah, it's very
It's
cool.
by Vanessa Hoskins. So, Vanessa, um, you probably actually wrote this months ago. That's the way these things occur. Um,
Hmm.
what were you told about what Paizo? What is the story that Paizo wanted to tell through this plot, and what did you find that you sank your teeth into?
Well, I think this plot is a lot about how justice and being just doesn't always mean being lawful. You're playing outlaws, you're
Mhm.
playing people that are against the law, but the law in Alkenstar is unfortunately corrupt. Not everyone, but enough that there are some
Uh-huh.
powerful players that have their thumb on some dangerous things, and you're gonna stop them. You're gonna put an end to their nefarious plots, even though you're not, bright and shining paladin good people. Paladin is one of the classes that they recommend you don't play for this. But
Mhm.
you're a rootin' tootin' outlaw who's gonna get justice for your own. You've been done wrong, and you're gonna go set things right.
Indeed, there are crooked shield marshals, and there's a mysterious gunslinging patron. So I should
Hmm.
bring people up to speed. Of course, we've published Guns and Gears, a hardcover that
Yes.
adds both guns and gears, clockwork technology to the Pathfinder setting. I mean, I guess the easy way to describe it is it's adding a little steampunk to uh,
Oh yes,
to the Pathfinder setting. Um,
absolutely.
so
More than a
that's
little, I
or
think.
the, yeah, yeah. So the tech it's more technologically advanced than you might normally find in high fantasy, but that of course has been a part of the Pathfinder setting
Mhm.
previously. Gunslingers and this land existed in Pathfinder First Edition.
Sure did.
So you were really able to just take dive into something, the city of Smog, Alkenstar. That is where this takes
Alkenstar, that's
place.
right.
That that what sort of resources did you look at in order to create the setting, and in what ways did you find an opportunity to kind of add to it and make it your own?
Trying to fix my green screen.
Yeah.
Well, I think what we really tried to do is I like to install just like a little tongue in cheek silliness and things,
Hmm.
especially with the flavor of this adventure. Like it's very rootin' tootin' gunslinging fun, and I wanted to really bring that out and just basically allow GMs to let it be over the top because there's a lot of really over the top stuff happening here, and
Hmm.
so by using set pieces and creatures and like custom NPC abilities that really speak to being over the top, I'm trying to get the players and the GM all in this just mood for just really really great fun. We're not going to take things too seriously, even though there
Right.
are some serious things happening. I want to make sure everyone is feeling relaxed while they're playing. And so I've got folks like throwing money in the air to distract you while they're shooting at you. We have people doing fancy stuff with alchemist fire and setting things ablaze. There's an enemy that's got that you'll be facing up against potentially. Actually, you might be an ally with just like really cool custom armor and like a shoulder mounted cannon. Like there's just so many really fun, as I said, just like over the top things. The whole thing is a mad rush down the tracks with the steam engine at max heat and everyone just like holding on for dear life as you're flying through this adventure.
That sounds like a great opportunity to bring in some of the art that we've pulled.
Oh yeah.
I have pulled some of the what I would call chapter header art to showcase, and it really shows how wacky things are in a
Oh goodness,
wonderful,
yes.
vivid sort of way. Here's our iconic gunslinger um, shooting her very large gun off and taking out something that looks like a quadruped and something in the distance that looks bipedal, a couple of constructs, and
Hmm.
a city that looks like it's a frontier town. There's
Oh,
if
absolutely.
you can
The
see
whole
it,
thing is
like
very
in the
frontier
background,
town
I
vibe.
yeah, I'm not seeing
Yeah.
a lot of building codes there. you
Oh
know,
yeah, no, no. They,
and
in Alkenstar, they gotta people have places they need to live. There's not a lot of building code. It's like, look, if it doesn't blow over in a breeze, it's
yeah,
probably fine. Just move your stuff in. And yeah, but
excellent.
clockworks are a big thing. So what you see there is there's a bunch of new clockworks in this book. There are 4 new ones, I believe. And what we're
Mm,
seeing are 2 of the new ones. We're seeing a clockwork hunter and a clockwork handler. And those are level 0 and 1 clockworks, respectively, that are going after our iconic gunslinger there. And she is just having a great time blowing them to little, gears and servos and bits.
perfect.
And,
I love her energy.
and
She's one
clockwork
of my
handlers are
favorites.
so, yeah. And the hunters are cool. The hunters are used by like the sewage and waste guild and stuff like that to go through the sewers and other places and get rid of, I don't know, rats and other vermin. But they're sometimes used for other purposes too. And then the clockwork handler you
Great.
see there, those are like used for a variety of tasks. So you can read all about different customized handlers that are used all over the city for all sorts of different things.
We'll move on to some of the other images. I see what feels like more of that frontier energy. Some of those long coats, leather
Yes.
coats, lots of devices, things that are exploding, and that's the beginning. That's part of the chapter art that's at the beginning, helping set the tone. Here's
Was you could
obviously. I want to
Yeah,
say
you
that's
can tell
another one
from
of those
these
handlers on
two.
the floor.
It is. It's another one of those handlers getting knifed by Mercial. And you can tell, like, based on the last image, we had a big metal door being blown open, and here we have what appears to be a bank teller being robbed. Again, you are the
Yeah.
outlaws. You are not the good guys. You are just out for either your own justice or maybe for someone that's important to you. Any way possible, including robbing the banks owned by corrupt businessmen. So,
A bank with steel bars
mhm.
and a lobby. Yeah, that's that's going to be something. It looks so Western, and it looks so um, not like anything I've really seen in Pathfinder. I much. I mean, maybe there
Yeah.
are others who know every single piece of art that Pathfinder's published, but this feels very unusual. And to see the iconics in masks is felt
Mhm.
very unusual too, because we don't usually change their outfits very much for
Right.
adventure paths, but these little changes are things that catch my eye. This
Right.
next one, lots of gears, lots of um, obviously, um, there might not be a lot of building codes in Arkansas, but Arkansas, Arkanstar,
Alkenstar.
Alken,
Alkenstar.
Alkenstar. Thank you,
Sure.
but their craft checks are are superior. I mean, they're making sturdy stuff, which is great.
Oh,
And
yeah.
so what we're
It's a
seeing
city of
here,
invention. Yeah, it's a city of
yeah,
invention. It's a city
yeah,
that has survived in the literal middle of the remnants of this war between 2 big nations and basically found their own salvation through innovation, through technology, alchemy. Uh, Traditionally, this area doesn't have any magic. In second edition, there's been a bit of an update, and they have magic now, but like sometimes it's tenuous, and
mhm,
people can set their clocks by it because sometimes mana storms roll on through, and you don't want to be using magic when that happens. So
yeah.
it's kind of interesting, but they've definitely opened it up so that folks can still play. Oh, I don't know, a magical gun toting, gun wizard or something, and that's I don't know, that's
Yeah.
pretty cool.
Yeah, I mean, I think what I'm seeing out of the designers and the developers are a way to create all of these adventures so that you can play the character you want to. There because this has some magic dead areas or wild magic areas, um, and there are mechanics for that
Hmm.
that you can pull from in
Yeah,
our recent Tome of Magic. Secrets of Magic, pardon me, Secrets of Magic hardcover.
yeah,
Yeah, Secrets of Magic hardcover that you can apply to this adventure, but it gives
you sure can.
GMs control. It gives GMs the control of,
Yeah.
well, do I want to create a situation where they're without magic, or don't I? And I think
Right.
that's what second
Well,
edition is doing, is giving
yeah,
GMs the power to tell the story they want.
And it's important to note too that over half of the classes released for Pathfinder 2nd Edition have some sort of magical component. Even if you're a monk or a champion, you have focus points. Those are spells. Those focus spells still count. And so there's many of the users here have magic. Even if we discount alchemists, who it's not really magic, and it's just weird science. But by opening up the world to allow magic users, you've said, hey, instead of saying you can only play with a third of the classes that we've written and a third of this content, you can now play with all of the classes and all of the content. And I think that was the main motivation behind it. I know Patrick Rennie has said this before, so I'm just going to repeat his words, that the main motivation is just to let players play the thing that they want to play rather
Yeah.
than worrying about being super loyal to the history that has been presented, and it's entirely possible. Now we haven't talked about it, and maybe it'll be in the new Lost Omens books. We don't know yet, but it's entirely possible that the magical scars that have happened in the mana wastes and around Alkenstar are healing, and now they're just unstable instead of completely magically devoid. So it's hard to say. However,
Indeed.
if
The
you're a
world continues to
traditionalist,
evolve.
exactly, yes. But if you're a traditionalist and you're like, well, one of the things I liked about Alkenstar is that they have guns and clockworks and stuff because they don't have a bunch of magic. You can still do a non-magical game if that's what you want to do. I know specifically Punks in a Powder Keg is written with the idea that you might be playing this with 0 magical people, and I think I haven't looked at every stat block that made it through development, but I think every single creature that you fight against is also non-magical, so that you can have that really like low magic, no magic feel.
Hmm. Yeah, giving the GM power to tell the story that they want to tell. If you
Yeah.
don't really know the Pathfinder setting and you just want to play this particular adventure in the way that you want to play it, the tools are there to do that. Or if you really know the lore like the back of your hand and you want to dig into that, there's an opportunity for that too. I'll let people know that the structure of the adventure path is that there are 3 adventure chapters, all written by Vanessa. There is a back matter article called Barrel and Bullet Saloon, written by Stephanie Lundeen. Stephanie recently contributed to, oh, there's that amazing saloon art. Um, so, so steampunk and so Pathfinder all at the same time. Uh,
Yeah, give us
so
a picture of that Bullet
Stephanie's,
and Barrel Saloon,
yeah.
which has shows once a week too. So it's a fun place.
And then there's an adventure toolbox that you were the author for, I believe, all those things. And you will find
Most of it.
additional creatures, most of it, yeah. Um, an ooze, some clockwork, a monster that I think you're going to spoil at the end of our conversation. Some
Yes.
some the NPCs that are in the adventure, they get detailed within the
Mhm.
back matter, and then there are some player rules here. I always like to highlight the player rules that are now
Oh yeah.
going to be a part of the game, regardless of whether or not you play this adventure path. They hit our licensed partners, and they share those on Archives of Nethys or Demiplane,
Hmm.
and those become rules that you can reference for any of your games. I see a lot of items called powder keg paraphernalia. It's got to be a lot of black powder innovations. I see a new archetype, the Alkenstar Agent archetype, um, with feats called Loose Cannon and Flasher Badge. Some
Right.
um, black powder feats that
Yeah.
I'm sure complement some of those black powder items.
Well, it's kind of
Did you,
cool.
yeah, tell
So
us
these
about
are
the
written by
creation of
Matt
those?
Morris. I was gonna say these are written
Ah,
by Matt Morris, so they were a surprise to me. But I've read through them, and I think they're super cool, and they're very flavorful for this scenario. There's like the Alkenstar agent archetype. So if you want to play that like
mhm,
undercover secret agent in the Old West type of thing, where it's like, ooh, I'm really
yeah,
working for someone else, but no one knows. This is the archetype for you. And then the black powder feats are they're not an archetype, but they are archetype feats. How does that work? So the intro one at level 2 is requires the martial artist dedication, and not being a monk, the actual martial artist dedication feat, and it gives you the ability to go into a powder punch stance. What does that mean? I'm just going to let you read it, but essentially it's different ways of doing like fisticuffs with black powder to enhance your punching. And it's the me that loves being a punch girl and absolutely everything I play is so excited about this. I was like, wait, I want to play this adventure path with this thing that Matt wrote, and I can't because I wrote it, and no GM in the right mind to let me play it. So I'm gonna
But
have to use it
with
in
any
something
luck,
else.
exactly, exactly. Well, that's probably all the time for we'll have
Sure.
today. Let's we've gotten a chance to talk a little bit about the plot, some of your
Yeah.
experiences in writing the story, and talk about what's in the back matter for players so that they can use that in years to come. Um, let's move to that spoiler about that creature at the back of the adventure toolbox. What is that?
So okay, so there was a creature that I wanted in there, and I remember talking to Patrick about it, and he's like, I don't know how this is gonna work. I don't really get it. And that was on me because I didn't explain it very well. So then I said, well, let me just write it, and if you don't like it, I'll write something else. So I wrote this up. It is the prairie drake. I'm sure people have heard about prairie dogs. I thought, well, what is the fantasy like equivalent of that? And it would be a prairie drake, right? Now there's like these desert drakes that fly around that are all sleek and burrow themselves in the desert sands. But what if you had one that was just around like the scrub desert, in places like Alkenstar? And what are they going to do? And so it's this little tiny. It's a oh my gosh, well it's small, but it's a small
It is.
sized drake, right? So they got the hind legs and the
Mhm.
wings and the little claws on the wings, and it's mostly a burrower. Like it doesn't actually. There you go. It's super cute. Oh my gosh, it is like ugly cute. It's all squat and hugging its little tumbleweed on the other side there. But yeah, so they like burrow around, and just like sorry, I modeled them just after prairie dogs, which are like apex predators in their area, and because when they burrow under the ground, they turn up a lot of new topsoil. They allow new plants to grow, which allows new animals to come in, and they're like really important for their environments. And
Yeah.
what I thought is like, well, drakes are all evil. So here's this drake who's like, I'm the apex predator and I have this territory and no one can mess with me, except that it's actually super helpful, but then it's really resentful about the fact that it's helpful. It's like, how dare you call me helpful? I'm going to go kill your pig. I'm going to go eat your sheep. I'm so mad.
Conflicted creature in a conflicted
That's
land.
right. How dare
That's
you call me
great.
adorable?
Well, that's terrific. Thank you for that Paizo Live spoiler. You'll find that
Sure.
in the back of Punks in a Powder Keg from Outlaws of Alkenstar, available
Yeah.
next Wednesday, the 27th of April, in print and PDF. Um, where do you like to be found on the interwebs, on the internet?
The best place
Where
to
can people
contact
find
me
you?
on the internet would be on twitch.com. And you can find me at Ninja Cat Vanessa, Vanessa.
Excellent. Well, and I should also mention, while a little precursor, this will also be available on Foundry Virtual Tabletop. This will be
Oh, yeah.
the debut volume for in our new partnership with Foundry VTT. The
I'm
beginner
so
box
excited.
has been released. We now sell our beginner box on Foundry, and this has yet to be released, but it should be day and date next Wednesday,
Okay,
and we'll be talking to Andrew White more about that. So I'll give everybody some context if
okay,
they haven't heard about Foundry VTT. But just
cool.
need to get that plug in there while we've got you. Thank you very much, Vanessa, for joining us and for holding out
Thank you
while
so much.
we got a bit of a late start, but we look
Sure.
forward to interviewing you in the future for all of, well, we'll see you at PaizoCon. I mean,
I will
we'll see you
absolutely
at
be there
PaizoCon.
100%.
Yeah,
Yes,
and our
guaranteed.
conversations will continue. Thank you
Cool.
kindly.
Thank you.
All right, so we're about to take a break, but I believe I have an image here of Volume 2 to show you. You can subscribe to Pathfinder Adventure Paths and make sure that you never miss a volume. The next one is called Cradle of Cradle of Quartz, Volume 2. And if we don't have the image yet, we'll have it later. But you can subscribe to Pathfinder Adventure Paths, and they will be shipped directly to your door. There it is. There's our gunslinger in all her glory, with some, I would say, harpy-like creatures, um, and our rogue hanging on for her life. And it looks like something train-like is exploding. I'm not quite sure. We'll find out what that backstory is soon enough. Of course, that's written by Scott Young. So make sure you subscribe, or just go to your favorite local game store and tell them that you're interested in buying all of these volumes. And I'm sure they'd be happy to set up the equivalent of a subscription. Although the unique, wonderful aspect of a Pathfinder subscription is that you do get a complimentary PDF along with your print copy. So keep that in mind. All right, we're going to go ahead and take a little break while we change out our guests. And when we come back, we'll have our Pathfinder panel to talk about our upcoming hardcovers. Stay tuned.
The latest releases for Pathfinder and Starfinder are now available at your local game store in Paizo.com. Goblins have come to the town of Sandpoint, intent upon stealing their fireworks for an upcoming festival. Do you have the goblin grit to pillage your way to victory and emerge from the town with the most fireworks? Pathfinder Goblin Firework Fight is a quick party game of theft and mayhem. Pillage loot from the town or from your fellow goblins, but watch out, the other goblins are just as likely to steal from you. You return to the Mogambia Magic Academy to find the villain you vanquished on a distant planet had long ago set up a sinister contingency scheme. It's up to you to save the school from utter destruction. The Strength of Thousands adventure path reaches its dramatic conclusion with Shadows of the Ancients. A distressed beacon from the desolate tundra sends you on a mission into the biting cold. Once you rescue the survivors of a crash of an off-world menace, you trace the threat to the gas giant Waydana 6, where a swarm colony slumbers amid the icy clouds. Can you defeat the waking creatures before they contact the larger hive mind? The Starfinder Horizons of the Vast Adventure Path continues in Volume 4, Icebound. The broken tusks find sanctuary at last, but this peace is destined to be short-lived. To complete your quest and prove yourselves worthy of the title of Mammoth Lords, you must defend your people, survive more wilderness perils, and wield the sacred light of the primordial flame to vanquish your ancient enemies once and for all. The quest for the Frozen Flame Adventure Path concludes with Burning Tundra. The Starfinder Horizons of the Vast Adventure Path continues in Volume 5, Allies Against the Eye, when a seemingly new player appears in the system. You may need to reach out to the planet's other charters, as well as the Pact Worlds and Viscarium, to make alliances to stand against this group in the coming months. Will you make new allies, or will you try to go it alone? The Red Mantis assassins intend to infiltrate a noble's manor and execute her for a slight against their order. With 3 assassins and 1 bitter mercenary on the job, the noble must die before the stroke of midnight in Pathfinder One-Shot, Mark of the Mantis. In Starfinder One-Shot System Takedown, a group of determined anti-establishment heroes seek to broadcast the hidden secrets of a corrupt Viscarium consul to the galaxy. In order to achieve their goal, the ragtag team needs to infiltrate a nearby compound and hack into the mainframe to get the message out. However, even if the group succeeds, can they escape the consul's inevitable reprisal? Pathfinder Society scenario Fury's Toll is part of the ongoing story of the Year of the Shattered Sanctuaries. When a group of Pathfinders sent to establish a presence at the Society's new lodge failed to report back, the Society sent a second group to investigate. When they arrived, they found the lodge in disrepair and a powerful foe with challenging tasks. With the task completed and the missing Pathfinders safe and sound, it is now time to prepare the lodge for a grand opening celebration. Desperate to pinpoint the location of the mysterious mastermind behind the Data Scourge digital attacks, the Starfinders attend an interfaith religious summit to connect with representatives of the Church of Triune. When religious zealots attack the summit, the Starfinders are caught in the crossfire. Can the Starfinders defend the summit's religious leaders? Will the feuding face shatter their burgeoning alliances in Starfinder Society scenario Feuding Face? United Interfaith Engineering is a new Sharon starship manufacturer with lofty ambitions. They hire you to take their newly designed Grimshaw 1 for a test flight from Absalom Station to a Laverian Shepherd Moon and back. Along the way, you put the starship through its paces, avoiding dangerous hazards, performing difficult maneuvers, and dealing with Liavara's massive wildlife in Starfinder Bounty Test Flight. The next time your party follows up on a rumor about an ancient, partially collapsed dungeon when seeking strange treasures and stranger dangers, these maps have you covered with 2 different underground ruins in Pathfinder Flipmat Shattered Dungeon. Place your bets on high adventure with the double-sided Starfinder Flipmat Casino, featuring a different far future casino on each side. Rub shoulders with the high and mighty at a high-stakes upper-class gambling palace, or dip down to the seedy side of town with a dark and dingy gambling den. This double-sided map features the surface of a wide expanse of water featuring outcroppings of rock and coral on one side, and a stretch of seabed on the other, with Starfinder Flipmat Waterworld. You'll be ready the next time your players discover they need a bigger boat. The Starfinder Flip Tiles Space Station Corridors expansion provides beautifully illustrated 6-inch by 6-inch map tiles that can be used to construct never-ending combinations of public thoroughfares and behind-the-scenes service corridors to enhance your orbital station. This expansion set, along with Starfinder Flip Tiles Space Station Starter Set, allows you to create futuristic space habitats with endless variety. Find your path to friendship and adventure with these new releases and more at Paizo.com and your favorite local game store.
Hello and welcome back to Paizo Live. I'm your host, Aaron Shanks. We spent the last segment talking to Vanessa Hoskins about Outlaws of Alkenstar, the new adventure path from Paizo. And it was great hearing about all of that steampunk adventure headed our way. Now we're going to dive back into even more Pathfinder with some hardcovers that are coming our way both this month and next month. So I'll just go ahead and introduce our guests, bring on our guests. We have Logan Bonner, Pathfinder lead designer. We have Luis Loza. I'll see if I can't bring you all in, our senior developer, and Andrew White from our tech department to talk about Foundry Virtual Tabletop at the end of the segment. Gentlemen, welcome and thanks for joining me on Paizo Live. Logan, we'll start with you. As I said, you're Paizo's Pathfinder lead designer. If someone's hasn't heard of you or doesn't know what you do, well, can you explain briefly what your job at Paizo is?
So most of what I'm doing is working on the rules and planning for books in the rule book line. If it says rule book on the back cover, like that,
like that.
that's one of the books I worked on. So and then that's what most of my work is. And then I also, like, if we've got an issue that affects the whole game system, or we need to make a big decision on, how do we want this particular type of rules to work, that is going to go to me as kind of like the deciding voice after, considering all the different possibilities and talking it out with the rest of the design team.
Thank you kindly. Luis, you are a senior designer for the Lost Omens setting line. Can you tell people what that job entails?
Yeah, I'm senior developer working alongside the other senior developer on the Lost Omens line, Eleanor Farron. And we're kind of the ones in charge of deciding what the Lost Omens line is really doing. We kind of concept the books, put them together, get all the authors involved, and all the big ideas come from us, and we shepherd that book line and keep the setting alive and up to date with our releases.
Thank you. Those have been some really exciting releases consistently for the last few years, so thank you for that. And Andrew White, I fumbled your title earlier. You are a front end engineering lead, not just from our
That's
tech
correct.
department.
Sure.
And thank you for joining us. You're also a freelance author for Paizo and have contributed content to our products as well. So I wanted to bring you in and integrate you into to the books we'll be talking about today. Thanks for joining us.
Yeah, thanks for having me.
Can you tell us more about what it is you do on a daily basis for Paizo?
Sure. So like you mentioned, I'm a member of the tech team, which means that I'm one of a number of diligent people that spend all day trying to keep Paizo.com as functional as possible. I mostly work on the front end of stuff, which means that we've been working on trying to give the site a facelift where possible, make it easier to get around, improve the UI UX in general. I also work on the interactive presentations that we use at conventions. And I have also recently been involved in spearheading the operation to get all of the Foundry content, Pathfinder content, onto Foundry VTT, which I'm super excited about. And yeah, I also occasionally get to write stuff. I've been a contributor to a bunch of things for Pathfinder and Starfinder. And yeah, that's what I do at Paizo. Lots of stuff.
Great. Yeah, you've got. It's great that you get to contribute in so many different ways, and we appreciate you for that. All right, we're going to circle back to Logan now, and he's going to. We're going to swing back to our rule book that's coming out at the next week, Wednesday, April 27th, and that is the Book of the Dead. Here we are. It's coming out in regular hardcover and special edition. And the special edition is a limited edition. We only print a certain number of them, and when they're gone, they're gone. The standard hardcover will live forever and be reprinted as many times as we need to.
We'll dig it up and get it back out there moving again, whatever needs.
Exactly, we'll animate it as needed. So it's been great in the last 2 months ago. We had Jason Bullman on Paizo Live to start to give audiences the big picture about what Book of the Dead is. And if you missed that episode, make sure you circle back and watch it. That was a great introduction. Over the last intervening weeks, we've done more exclusive previews with the folks over at Really Dicey, who covered let's go in order. No Direction, I believe, covered chapter 1, lots of player options called Prayers for the Living. Chapter 2 is Hymns for the Dead, and that was with Nonat1's YouTube personality, dug deep into that chapter with a couple of videos. And also Chapter 4, Lands of the Dead, the folks over at Really Dicey did a deep dive into Chapter 4. Chapter 5 is an adventure, and so we don't want to spoil that too much. And Logan's been involved in interviews, helping to support all of these previews and all of these chapters. But we've left Chapter 3, The Grim Crypt, for today, and that is the goes from page 70 to page 173 or so, full of monsters and undead and more rules. So thank you for joining me to focus on chapter 3, Logan. And I just wanted to talk about, in a big picture, what monsters are in there, why are they in there, what new tools will this chapter give to game masters? What can you tell us about the big picture of what you wanted to accomplish with this chapter?
The big picture is that this book is kind of the first in a set of themed lines. So this is a book about undead, so we want to do all the undead stuff. But it's kind of
Mhm.
replacing where we might have done like a Bestiary 4 in first edition. Uh, this is
Right.
kind of like we still it's taking the spot of monster books, and monsters are still an important part of it. And undead are monsters primarily. So I knew that when we were, determining how much to put in here, monsters were going to need to get a pretty good chunk because we've done so many different undead over the years, and we want to make sure like all the coolest classics come back, that we get more options for monsters you're going to want to use a lot of, like vampires or ghouls or whites or that sort of thing. So it was like, okay, how many monsters can I possibly squeeze in here, given the other stuff we want to do in the book, given our page count? And so the answer is a lot.
A
We
lot.
also undead are also a popular option for summoning, and for some of the new necromancer options in here can animate more undead. So it's like, okay, we're serving multiple people with this section, and we want to make sure that all of them are happy. So it's just like, all right, squeeze every ounce of blood out of this undead stone to get all these cool monsters in here.
Terrific. I see that it begins with paragraphs on controlling the dead and undead adjustments, ways to make the existing undead that you have access to stronger or weaker depending on what you need. Um,
Yeah.
of course, there are three bestiaries already, and
Right.
there are undead in all of those. So those adjustments can apply to any of those, if I understand correctly.
Well, the undead adjustments are a little different. They turn any
Yeah.
creature into an undead. So if you're just like,
Okay.
all I need
Okay.
is a weird undead troll, uh, good luck. You can just say like, I want this to be a vampire troll, and you slap the
Oh,
vampire adjustments onto the troll. You've got something you can throw on your table and get running pretty quick.
yeah.
So that's
That's an
kind of the idea
unfortunate
behind
misunderstanding.
those.
Yeah. That's an unfortunate misunderstanding on my part because that means that now all monsters in all the bestiaries can potentially be undead, is what you're telling us.
Yeah, I shouldn't have spoiled the surprise. I'll let your game master surprise you with that one.
No, no, I think it's best to be on our toes when it comes to undead. I don't think that's really a
Yeah.
spoiler. That's terrific,
Yeah, if you want
and
a
a great
ghost
thing to point
gelatinous
out.
cube, you can make that happen.
For example, just
Yeah.
to pull something out of a hat. That's amazing. So I've pulled some images here
Hmm.
so that we can look at them while we chat. I just grouped things into themes like skeletons, right? These are various kinds of skeletons that you'll find, even undead beetles that are more of a shell than something you with a spinal column. Um,
Yeah.
and so, how did you decide what sorts of creatures to add based on what's already been presented?
Well, for
How do you choose skeletons?
skeletons and zombies were the big categories where it's like we've got a bunch of these, but we know you can just use so many of them. Um, and Jason Bowman wrote both those sections, so it was pretty easy to just be like, Jason kind of knows the score. He knows what kinds of things can go in there. So really, it was just kind of, all right. We've got a couple specific goals. We want some intelligent zombies. We want like a zombie lord, and the rest of them just kind of put them at appropriate levels and work around it. So a lot of this
Hmm.
is just like Jason's ideas for some cool skeletons and zombies, and like the what did we call it? The beetle carapace was one where it's just kind of like, what would be a fun take on skeletons is an exoskeleton instead of an endoskeleton, so it can like
Yeah.
uh, open up and pull you inside it because it's empty because it's just the skeleton. So there's some fun
If you
stuff
see
we
a
did with that,
skeleton, if
and just let Jason
yeah,
run wild.
mhm. If you see a beetle like that, I'm not sure you'd know if it were undead or not at a glance. I mean, I think
Yeah,
you
yeah,
normally just see a shell anyway.
yeah. You
That,
could definitely have one that's
okay.
in better shape than that illustration of one that just looks like a bigger
Yeah, yeah.
beetle, and you'll
It's
find out in a moment.
when you can see through it, that's your first clue.
Yeah,
Here we have some ghouls. Yes.
yeah. So ghouls are one of those sections where they've got kind of an extra large role in the world. And so we did kind of a write up. The Book of the Dead is an in world book written by Geb. So a lot of this book is written in Geb's voice. And actually, Andrew White on the call here wrote the
Hmm.
section on ghouls and got to kind of pretend to be a creepy undead wizard slash king for a while to write that ghoul intro. And then we also have a section of stat blocks with the Lacedon, which you can see on the right there, and the Priest of
Hmm.
Kabiri on the left. So those were some pretty cool takes on the ghoul.
Amazing. So there's a like lore of ghouls, but also ghoul creatures.
Yeah.
The ghoul creatures you'll find here in chapter 3, and then the lore is elsewhere.
The lore is also in
Yeah.
chapter 3. So
Ah,
there's like a 2-page section before each one, so you can kind of get
yeah.
yourself thinking in the mindset of a ghoul or a wight or a vampire.
Ah, yes, I see. I just stumbled upon the 2 pages about ghosts, which are coming up.
Yeah.
So there's folks, I really think of these rule books as I just use the 80-20 rule. It's 80% lore and crunch and 20% lore. And you can see how the design and the development team have just mixed that together in this book so that there's lore everywhere. You just have to read it from cover to cover to absorb everything. It's great. Um, um, so yeah, the next slide that we saw are whites
Yeah.
of various kinds, hunter whites and big, scary, stealthy whites, and yeah, so there's a variety there to pull from. Did you get a chance to sort of flesh out what it means to be a white in this book?
Yeah, one of the things about whites is that they're often kind of soldiers, often working under, some type of undead overlord. So a lot of these are like, here's a ranger
Mm-hmm.
type of white, and here's a rogue type of white, and a kind
Mm-hmm.
of champion type of white. So those all kind of have a really clear role. If you're going to get into a combat and you see this white with a bow, you kind of know that it's going to really pepper you with some evil undead arrows. So they have a pretty cool niche in undead encounters.
Scary. This is definitely the category of the scary, intelligent undead.
Oh yeah,
That's great. Oh yeah. And then that's a tree that has white in the name, but isn't
yeah. That's
probably white per se.
it is, yeah.
Copse
It's
white?
not a white per se. Yeah, copse white. That's right.
Yeah,
Or
yeah. I
corpse
just
root is
okay.
the final version. I think we changed it at some point after we ordered it to
Ah.
not have white in the name because of this confusion. But yeah, it's
Okay.
still a fun little preview because it has some it can take root. It can become planted in place if it's not kind of walking around being a creepy undead thing. And it's kind of themed around a blight and hucks rotten fruit at you, so it's a pretty fun monster.
Well, I wanted to make sure it was included here just because it's not all humanoids in
Yeah.
in this chapter. There's
Yeah,
all
some
sorts
other
of
good examples
basic
of
things in
that
there.
is we brought back the Death Coach from first edition, which is just an undead carriage. Uh, there are a lot of things where it's like when you're doing a book all about undead, you really can find some of those weirder takes, like the shred skin that's sentient or animated skin, the raw
Hmm.
nerve that's an animated nervous system. You can kind of say like, all right, this isn't all going to be just the basic stuff. We can really go deep and do some things that are kind of odd takes on undead.
We'll move through the other slides and then have a chance to touch base with Luis and Andrew about this book. Here's a couple of ghosts that I pulled. Um, and there, yeah, as I said, there are a couple pages just to deepen your knowledge and understanding of ghosts in particular, as well as this book just really talks about the nature of undeath in general, both from a player,
Mhm.
I mean, from a player standpoint, but that also then informs the GM about what makes undead undead. And so, were there anything, Logan? Was there anything with ghosts that you were trying to accomplish, or just provide more variety?
So with ghosts, it's kind of interesting because the ghost pirate captain is kind of more of a classic ghost, uh, you know,
Indeed.
that you're going to encounter on the sea in this case. Then the hungry ghost is actually a neutral creature instead of an evil one,
Mm-hmm.
because ghosts are kind of such a broad concept that you can have a lot more ideas incorporated into them. They aren't quite as universally evil and creepy. Well, universally creepy, probably. Universally evil, not necessarily. So you
Right.
can, keep the ghost fed and happy, and things are going to go better for you. It's a pretty
Great.
fun concept to play with in your games.
So we have our traditional skeletons and zombies. We have some non-humanoid undead, and we have some non-evil undead.
Yeah.
Great. And the next
We also
slide
we also
might
have the
be
Mortix in here. We expanded on Mortix, so we also
ah.
have living creatures that are only undead when they're holding their breath.
Excellent. The Mortix were established, I believe, in the last adventure path of Pathfinder First Edition, maybe
That's
second to
right.
last.
Yeah, and then we brought them
And
into one of the bestiaries for the first batch
yes.
of them, and this is kind of some of the other. This is like the Goblin Mortic and the Dwarf Mortic, and kind
Mhm.
of
I don't have
finishes
pictures of
out
them
that
today,
base
but I
story.
know they're going to be very popular, and I think it's almost like a kind of a death touched kind of character
Yeah,
concept. If you're from Starfinder, you'll recognize the death touched theme, and this is sort of some specific examples of how that applies to dwarves and elves and halflings and Pathfinder and goblins. Now, um, here's our mummies of various kinds,
mm,
um, some in better shape than others. Um,
yeah. The
and
Auroran
I
Mummy
think,
is another non-evil undead. They're lawful
uh-huh.
neutral and kind of preserve themselves over time before their death in a very disciplined way. So they
Ah,
are one of the cool things in here is kind of the different ways someone can get mummified. A lot of those are represented. So the
hmm
ice mummy there on the right is preserved in ice, and you've got the
with the
decrepit
staff.
mummy there on the left, who's just kind of was
Yeah,
probably a pretty decent mummy, but has been exposed to the elements a little too much.
indeed. And then one or two, oh yeah, there's a couple more slides. Now, I think what's next is what I would have called nightshades in the past. Let's see if that's
Mhm.
right. Yeah, but we've renamed them.
Yeah, yeah, that's right. They're called Darvaka here. We kind of gave them
Uh-huh.
an in-world name that they call themselves. We've done that with some other creatures like lizard folk or Iruxi. A lot of those can kind of be used interchangeably, and one is probably more polite and respectful. But
hmm
they're based on the same concepts from first edition. So the Nightshades
Yeah,
all include their Nightshade name as well as their Darvaka name in here. Uh, so
great.
yeah, these are kind of the classic ones. We gave them a bit of a visual revamp, and some they're shadow creatures, undead from the shadow plane, so they can do a lot of cool stuff with shadow. The uh, Psychever there in the middle can change its stance and can kind of run around on all fours very quickly, or it can stand up and start smashing stuff with its giant spiky forearms.
Nice. All right. I think there's one or two more slides. There's yeah, our vampires. Now these are less
Mhm.
traditional vampires, I think. Um,
Yeah, these are
they're-
these are the Vitalarana vampires, which
mhm.
are kind of based more on Indian myth, and they're psychic vampires. So we kind of had two different concepts in first edition that have kind of coalesced into one here because they were kind of similar and kind of not. So these are kind of taking that psychic vampire idea and making that more the core concept of the creature. So they have the ability to drain thoughts instead of blood, and uh, some are a little more cerebral than some of the more bestial types of
Mhm.
vampires.
It reminds me that there is a sidebar on the first page of chapter 3 about undead origins, and it's
Mhm.
just a little summary of the real world cultures from which many of these undead monsters come from, which I think is really
Right.
useful to try to understand if you want to do more research and dive deeper into mythology and lore. That's your signpost, and so that was
Yeah.
really helpful. And of course, we have a lich. I
Yep.
believe there are several kinds of liches in this book. This is just the one piece of art that I pulled.
Yeah, we there are two liches. There's the Horde Lich and the Rune Carved Lich. At least in
Mhm.
monsters, you of course can be a lich in Chapter 2. Uh,
Indeed.
but this Horde Lich just has extra skeletons packed inside it that it can pop out and send its servitors to attack you.
Right.
Uh,
Like you do.
so this is another Jason Bowman joint. He's a big fan of liches. So it's like, you know what, Jason, you're going to get to do liches. Have fun.
He is. He's a big fan of liches. So great. We've got him contributing some basic skeletons and zombies, and then some liches as well. So his fingerprint will be all over this book. Great.
Indeed.
Let's take a moment to just touch base with. Oh, and this is the art from the beginning of chapter 3, the header art that I wanted to show off. And Andrew, I wanted to check in with you about your experience writing about the ghouls. Um,
Sure.
did you get it? Did you? So that's like a lore component. And did you get to make some creatures as well, or was it primarily the lore?
So so there were two sections that I wrote for Book of the Dead, and one of them, as Logan
Hmm.
mentioned, was the ghouls. And
Hmm.
there's two specific sections of the book that focus on ghouls. There's the part where you can be a ghoul, and then there's the
Hmm.
ghouls as antagonists section.
Yeah.
And I wrote the latter. So I wrote the lore on, uh, Logan mentioned, I wrote Geb's treatise on ghouls and what ghouls are and how they the niche they occupy in the undead ecosystem, I guess, for lack of a better word.
Yeah.
And I also wrote the two types of ghouls that are new monster stat blocks for the book. So that is
Oh,
the
great.
priest of Cabriri, which is the one on the left, and that is a ghoul priest of the ghoul deity Cabriri, who has the
Hmm.
ability to buff fellow ghouls and is generally kind of the boss of a pack of ghouls that you might encounter in a dungeon somewhere. And the
Yeah.
Lacedon, which I guess is, I mean, it's an aquatic ghoul. Um,
Hmm. That's what I recall.
it's been around since like first edition D&D, back when
Yeah.
there was sort of an aquatic version of everything. Like I think they made the rules for underwater combat and then realized that they needed stuff beyond
Right.
fish to fight, so they created like, oh, we need aquatic ghouls and uh,
Right.
mernators and stuff like that, aquatic ogres.
Right.
So I tried to take that and I tried to turn that into something that was its own unique thing rather than just a ghoul with a swim speed. Um,
Right.
so that
Oh,
was a
that's
lot of fun
great.
as well. And
Something for people to dive into.
I also wrote the necromancy section in the book, also, and the reanimator
Oh,
archetype, and a bunch of feats for necromancers and basically casters who enjoy raising the dead and keeping them around and making them fight for them,
they,
and sometimes
yeah,
so
we
yeah,
do have a
that
fan
was it
base
was a
of a Necromancer fan base. So yay, that got done.
Yep. It was something I think a lot of people were anticipating, and including me, because I think the fantasy of being a necromancer who has a bunch of minions following him around and being able to create more undead and killing something and saying, "Okay, damn, now that thing is mine," um, is something that people have been looking forward to. So I hope that they enjoy it as much as I enjoyed writing it.
Great. Well, we should check in with Luis and what he was able to contribute to Book of the Dead. I didn't pull any art because I just stayed with the classics, the zombies and the skeletons. But I suspect, considering you're a specialist in the setting, you were able to create some undead that were rather unique to the setting, or can you tell us about what you developed and how it fits in?
Sure. I just contributed a few monsters for this book, but a
Hmm.
lot of them pulled on a lot of real world culture. So I wrote the ghoul, but it's spelled Ghul, which is kind of drawing on the origins of the kind of nowadays common ghoul folklore, which is from kind of Arabic folklore. Um,
Hmm.
and in the that folklore, ghouls, depending on the story, might have been, genies that became evil and twisted and stuff like that. But a lot of the common themes is that they can transform into hyenas and trick people into coming into their lairs, and then they consume them, like ghouls do. So I did that. I did the Llorona, which is a creature from Mexican folklore, which is usually in those stories a woman that has drowned in a river or some body of water, and then tries to trick other people, be it children or people that have wronged her, to come by and then also end up drowning. And in a similar vein, I did the Onryo, which is from Japanese folklore. And it's kind of like the basis of a vengeance spirit that a lot of things like the Grudge and the Ring drew upon to create the monsters, from those movies. So they're
Mhm.
all about vengeance. They tend to have this weird ability where they might create, clumps of wet hair or gross swamp mud that coalesces in your throat and starts to suffocate you. And then, that vengeance never dies. Even if you destroy the Onryo, it'll continue on and possibly curse you with that same feeling of vengeance to continue to take out on others. And the last one I did was a thing called the grappling spirit, which in the outline when I was given was just it's a ghost that can like grab people and wrestle them and stuff. So I kind of gave that a fun pro wrestling luchador feel, and they have a mask that kind of is the core to the theme of this character. They might have been a gladiator or some kind of wrestler or warrior in their past life, and they wanted to keep fighting on, and that's how they became the spirit. And there's a little sidebar that explains where you might find these. Sometimes they show up in Iblados, or sometimes they show up in Acadia. So there's
Mhm.
connections to the setting here and there as well. So a lot of fun little monsters that I think you can add in to, uh, you know, give you a break from the common skeleton
Yeah.
or zombie or things that you're seeing, that but still be really freaky and a nightmare to face.
Right, right. Variety, so much variety. Yeah, I know that art has already made its way onto Twitter and
Yeah.
onto the internet. People saw that grappling spirit and loved it. So I I'm sure that when folks pick up this book, they won't miss it. It'll stand out. Um, while we have you here, let's go
Sure.
ahead. Those are all of the chapter three monsters that I wanted to make sure that people saw and got an
Hmm.
understanding of what was in chapter three of Book of the Dead. It's as I said, available next Wednesday. Let's go ahead and transition to Lost Omens, Knights of Lastwall,
Yeah.
which is our next hardcover coming out. That's part of the Lost Omens setting line, and
Hmm.
that will come out at the end of May, May 25th. And I think we have some art of the cover to show off, and then we can
Hmm.
just talk about what's in it a little bit, chapter by chapter.
Sure. Absolutely.
Uh,
So
yeah,
that cover is showcasing uh, Calibrin Iomadar, who is one of the leaders of the faction of the Knights of Lastfall. She's kind of kicking a lot of butt on that cover. If you can see, there's a lot of undead left in her wake,
yeah,
just cleaning off her sword after a job well done. And you know what? Honestly, the Book of the Dead is cool and all, but for my money, I'm all about going in and destroying them. So I'm excited for Knights of Lastfall. If you have been following our setting, you might have remembered there once existed a nation called Lastwall that was intent on keeping the Whispering Tyrant Tarbafon, the super powerful Megalich, from escaping. Wouldn't you know it, they failed. Tarbafon escaped shortly before we switched editions and put an end to Lastwall and destroyed the nation. But when he did that, he didn't destroy its spirit and he didn't destroy all of its people. So out of the ruins and ashes of Lastwall rose the Knights of Lastwall. It's the survivors that are left that are working to finish the job and put an end to Tarbafon and the rest of the evil that he brings along with him once and for all.
right. This is an amazing counterpoint to the Book of the Dead. It's
Yeah.
a group of holy or at least just devoted warriors and knights,
Yeah.
largely dedicated to fighting the undead. And
Yes.
so if you what if you don't know much about the setting? Of course, this is a setting
Mhm.
book. Let's just say I know I want to play a knight. Um,
Yeah.
how does this help someone play a knight in Pathfinder generally?
So the Knights of Lastwall are very tied to the setting. You know, their history
Indeed.
and whatnot is tied to the setting. But even in the very beginning, the introduction of the book, we explain how you can use a lot of the information used in this book. Play any kind of knight. It doesn't take much work to say you're a knight of Lastwall wearing this cool shining armor and wanting to go out on a crusade to stop evil, and just kind of erase the word Lastwall and just say I'm a knight out to be
Yeah.
valiant and destroy evil. You can always be your knight in shining armor, and a lot of the rules and information presented here is really easily adapted into kind of any campaign if you wanted. The Knights of Lastwall are broken up into lots of major factions, a lot of smaller factions within the organization itself. And you
Hmm.
can just say, hey, if I'm homebrewing and I want to use this book, you can just say these are different orders of knights. Maybe they don't all work under the same banner, but there's a lot that you can grab and use for your game. And if you do want to dive into it, well, don't you know it? This is pretty much the best source for the Knights of Lastwall. We haven't had a chance to really dive deep into what they're up to since the start of second edition. This is our first chance to tell you their history, flawed as it might be in some cases, and what they're up to now, and explain how you play this knight, and you showcase that you don't have to be literally wearing plate mail astride a horse to be a knight. If you are
Yeah.
kind of working towards doing good and helping others and putting an end to evil, you can be a member of the Knights of Lastwall. Even if you're just like an everyday cook, people still need to eat. People still need, their horses tended to. The Knights of Lastwall have so many people among their ranks, not just literal knights. They have spellcasters, they have medics, they have tailors to help with patching up their clothing and things like that. So they bring on anyone who's willing to fight the good fight.
It's a whole organization with many roles and many ways to build a character within that organization. So yeah, chapter 2 is called Among the Knights, and it goes into different factions and different faiths and different pantheons. So it sounds like this is very setting specific. This is
Yes.
a way to really deeply root your character. What sort of tools will we find there?
Well, this, along with the information you find in the introduction, the first chapter, really tells
Hmm.
you about how you join the knights, the day to day, the kind of expectations of the knights, and then it goes into the major factions. There's two major factions, which are the Shining Sentinels, are the kind of knights in shining armor, classic style that you imagine. They're out to defend people and do good. And then there is the Crimson Reclaimers, who are all about vengeance and putting a stop to evil. They definitely do try to help people, but they are kind of a strike first. Great, the best defense is a good offense, right? They will
Hmm.
go out and destroy undead, go into the gravelands, go into places where undead or other evils have taken hold, and try to put a stop to those first, and then help when they have a chance. But they are the strike team for the Knights of Lastwall. And from there, you get to see a lot of smaller groups. If you're more focused on reconnaissance, if you're more focused on spell casting, there's a lot of smaller factions. And we also introduce a lot of notable NPCs that you can use as a GM to quest givers or to kind of include in your campaigns as Knights of Lastwall. And we also talk about the different religions that might be that might be something that a Knight of Lastwall would follow. We have obvious ones like Iomade, who's the god of valor, and we have Sarenrae, who's the god of healing. Those make a
Hmm.
lot of sense. But we also have new gods here, like Suduya, who's a god from Udra, inspired by a lot of Indian themes, and she is the god of strategy, which is planning your battles and minimizing losses is very important. So that might be a god you follow, or you might follow the god Archeros, who is an imperial lord and is all about keeping vigil and defending others. And you might not take the fight out into the world. You might just stand where you are and guard the people that you're already protecting. And Archeros might be the one you follow, or you might have a mix of different things. We have a few different pantheons that include these gods and other gods presented in the rest of the setting that definitely cover a lot of different themes. So you have a lot of different ways you can express yourself as a knight, not just mechanically, but also through role play. through which people you associate with, and that second chapter is all about that.
And now, what I realize after hearing you say all of that is that you can create an adventuring party that is
Yes.
completely made up of knights, or at least associated in some way with Knights of Lastwall. There's a place for your spellcaster. There's a place for your skill monkey character. There's a place for your knight in shining armor, and a place for your religious caster. And
Yeah,
all of you can
absolutely.
go out and have an entire campaign in which you're all connected together. That's really exciting.
Yeah,
Um,
absolutely.
it's not just about the fighters.
Correct. Yeah, if you want to be the cleric or the rogue or the wizard in the party, there's a spot for you among the knights.
That's great. And chapter 3 is called Knights of Lastwall Options. From what I remember, it is more the crunch, the feats, the
Yes.
backgrounds, the archetypes. What's new there?
Well, yeah, we wanted an obvious place for the rules. If you just want to jump into the rules right away, if you're already playing a
Mm,
Knight of Lastfall, you say, "Hey, I just need another feat that I want to take because I'm about to level up." So you can
yeah,
jump into chapter 3, which is all about our rules. Definitely cover some backgrounds, and there are some new rare backgrounds that give you cool things, like the ability to cast Disrupt Undead as part of your background. And then there have been 3 different archetypes that we've published so far that are connected to Lastwall, or the Knights of Lastwall specifically. Those are the Knight Reclaimant, the Knight Vigilant, and the Lastwall Sentry. Rather than try
hmm
to give even more archetypes, we decided it makes a lot more sense to expand on the archetypes here to give you more options with those. Those cover a lot of the themes that we wanted for the organization. We're just giving
yeah,
you a new spread of feats for each of these archetypes. And beyond that, we realize that not everyone's taking those archetypes. Like we mentioned, you might be a wizard, you might be a rogue, or any other class here in the game. At this point, there's 20 different ways you can play a Knight of Lastfall just with the base classes. So
yeah.
we wanted to present different feats that give you options regardless of what class you're taking. I think we cover the majority of the classes. Not everyone gets a thing, so I'm sorry, I don't think there's specifically a gunslinger Knight of Lastfall feat, but I'm sure you can make do otherwise. But there are new class feats for rogues, new class feats for druids and fighters and champions, wizards. All the classics are really covered here. And beyond that, there's been a lot of different archetypes outside of those 3 that I mentioned that really covered a lot of themes that we thought worked well for this, like the medic archetype or the bastion
hmm
archetype, which is focused on fighting with
Right.
shields. That we thought, let's just add more feats to them that are really have a lot of Knights of Lastwall flavor for that. So there is a new kind of banner you can take if you're a cavalier, and there is a specific kind of covering fire you can provide if you're an archer, things like that. So there's lots of different options you can take depending on what you're already playing. You don't have to really dive into the Knights of Lastfall archetype specifically. You can take stuff that you already have and then give it that extra bit of Knight of Lastfall flavor.
Yeah.
And of course, we have new magic items, we have new spells, we have new equipment for you that works really well for any kind of knight.
That's great. You've brought more characters, more archetypes, more classes into the
Mhm.
organization so that they can feel like they're part of Last Wall, just as much as these other 3 core archetypes. And yeah, that looks like it's about 22 pages of options. So I'm sure that's going to be very popular. Um, and lastly, chapter 4 is Knights of Last Wall Efforts. So we've got some regions, we've got some nations, we've got some areas, some geography. That what this is all about? Is is
Yeah, so
our locations in Galarian?
the Knights of Lastfall are kind of focused primarily in the Eye of Dread region, which is the
hmm
home for former Lastfall and a lot of what Barbafon's up to. But we wanted to showcase a lot of the different places where obvious Knights of Lastfall campaigns were happening. So this chapter covers a lot of the basics in terms of like what kind of campaign can you run with Knights of Lastfall, and then goes into specifics about talking about the Gravelands. They give you about a dozen pages on the Gravelands, give you a
hmm
gazetteer with that talk about maybe Knights of Lastwall in the greater Eye of Dread region. Maybe they're up to stuff in Absalom. Maybe they're up to stuff in the Shining Kingdoms or other regions. We wanted to showcase a few areas where we think the more obvious Knights of Lastwall campaigns and efforts would be going on, and each of those gets at least a spread. And then we also, cover a few other kind of scattershot areas, even beyond the Inner Sea. What would happen if you decide to be a Knight of Lastwall that travels to Tian Sha or Arcadia or something like that. And we try to give you at least a little bit of information on how to do that. But we're hoping that this inspires a lot of GMs to create their own Knights of Lastwall campaigns, and using this book really have a lot of what they need for adventure hooks and ideas for how they can include the Knights of Lastwall, and maybe even not a campaign that you play as Knights of Lastwall, maybe they're antagonists or they're allies to an existing group already.
That's deep lore, and that's a great way to integrate it into the game you're already playing or inspiration for a new campaign. Amazing. This will be a really sweet new addition to the Lost Omens campaign setting. And I wanted to take a moment and just check in with Logan and Andrew, see if Logan, did you have an opportunity to, as a designer, did you oversee this, or was that outsourced to someone else on the design team? Any Knights of Lastwall? Oh, I think you're muted. Let's see if we can get you working.
On?
Okay. Let's check in with Andrew and see if we've got you in terms of audio. Andrew?
Yeah. Well, actually, I don't know. Can you hear me?
Yeah.
Oh, you can. Okay, great.
Yeah,
That said, I did not contribute anything to Knights of Lastwall.
Right.
But it looks like an awesome
right.
book, and I'm looking forward to reading it.
Indeed, your necromancers are going to have an interesting time.
Yeah, they're good
integrating in
mostly.
Yeah. You could, and that's the interesting thing is I've stumbled into actual cool thing about Pathfinder is you can take some of the benevolent aspects from necromancers from Book of the Dead and maybe combine them with Knights of the Lastwall. The characters might not necessarily see themselves as naturally aligned, but sometimes folks are forced to work together, right? So
well, it's a good role-playing opportunity. Think about it that way.
It is, yeah. There's some potential friction there for these different organizations, but there's also some opportunities for some synergy and cooperation that you might not otherwise expect. Logan, do we have you back? Just doing an audio check briefly.
I don't know.
Am I here? We do. Yeah.
Okay,
did you get to contribute from a design standpoint to Lastwall?
I didn't do a whole lot on it. So we have a different design lead for every book, and honestly, it's been long enough. I don't remember who was design lead on Knights of Lastwall. Luis, do you remember? Was it me?
It was Mark Seifter at the time. So
okay,
hey, it wasn't me.
Okay. Well, great. But I know that, of course, as Pathfinder lead designer, Logan, you sort of set the overall tone that the rest of the design team looks to when they are lead on a particular book.
Usually, so, if someone else is leading a book or is serving as the design lead on the book, which is like Luis is leading the book overall, kind of the project lead,
right.
And then the design lead is there to consult. I'll only deal with it if it's like there's something here that's weird. It's a brand new type of rule or something like that. That's when I'll get involved. When it's like, oh, this is something that needs bigger consideration. Like if it's a normal magic item or feat, usually they don't cross my desk.
Understood. That makes sense. All right. Well, thank you, Luis, for bringing us up to speed on Knights of Lastwall. Now let's segue over to Andrew and talk more about the new Foundry virtual tabletop relationship that Paizo has. For someone who, virtual tabletop, of course, is the way in which you play online, very similar to what we are experiencing right now. With usually it's it's people on calls, sometimes video boxes, and then you get to be able to see the game table in some manner on screen. There are folks like I would say demi-plane who bring people together so that you largely just you talk about your adventure, but a virtual and you are able to communicate and share notes, and there's lots of digital tools. But a virtual tabletop specifically is really more about having a shared screen that you're all referencing. And
Sure. So,
Foundry is like that, yes,
yeah, I
for
mean,
people who might
at
not be
its
familiar.
core, I think. Oh, can you hear me?
Yeah.
Okay, cool. Just making sure. So, yeah, at its core, a virtual tabletop it's exactly what it sounds like. It's a substitute for an actual physical tabletop where you can put maps
Hmm.
and character sheets and have some sort of a facsimile of rolling dice and play a role playing game together in even if you're not all in the same physical space. And for obvious reasons, virtual tabletops have been around for a long time, but for obvious reasons, they took off during the pandemic, and they've come down
Indeed.
some. But I think a lot of people, having tasted virtual tabletops for the first time, realizing, oh yeah, now I can play again with my buddies that I haven't seen in 10 years because they live on the other side of the country. Um,
Yes.
they're experiencing something of a renaissance, and Foundry is a fairly new player on the scene. Uh, the obviously some of the older ones like Roll20 and Astral and Fantasy Grounds have been around for a long time, and we produce content for them as well. But Foundry is
Hmm.
one of the newest ones that uses some of the most cutting edge web technology, and it also has the benefit of having a huge open source community, so that people in its community can build modules for it and extend its functionality and create content for it very easily. Um, and one of the things that we got out of that is Foundry has an incredibly robust implementation of the Pathfinder Second Edition rule set. A huge number of volunteers have all worked together to create this rule set. Essentially, well, for Paizo, it's free. But that rule set automates all kinds of things. Like if your tokens are positioned on a map, it can tell you which tokens are flat-footed to each other. It can calculate range penalties. Um, it can automatically apply buffs, debuffs, everything. It's really cool system. And because of that, I have been pushing for quite some time within Paizo to try and get us to find some way to produce premium content for it. And recently we did forge a formal partnership with Foundry, and we already have put out our first piece of premium content, which is the beginner box. And the beginner box is an interesting place, an interesting piece of Foundry content, because in addition to being a cool introduction to the Pathfinder rule set on Foundry, it has been designed to be an introduction to the Foundry software itself, which is a commercial product. You buy it and then you set up hosting for it. There's a lot
Hmm.
of different options for it. Um, but this is designed so that people who are familiar with Pathfinder but not Foundry, or familiar with Foundry but not Pathfinder, can install this thing and have it serve as an introduction to the other. That said, it's also beautiful. It's got some really awesome maps. The tokens that you just showed in there earlier, they've taken all of the original art from the bestiary and they've converted them into these high res tokens. They're really cool, really high res, and look awesome on a virtual tabletop. Um, Most interestingly, I think this is a cool value add is the maps themselves. The maps that we produce in our print products are super cool maps, but they are designed to be used in a normal tabletop setting. You look at the map and then sometimes you'll sketch it out onto a grid
Yeah.
that's on your tabletop, or you'll blow it up or something like that. They're awesome maps, but they're not designed to be zoomed in on the way
Right.
some of the maps are in a virtual tabletop like this. So what we've done is, well, and by we, I mean the Foundry team that worked on this, have gone
Yeah.
through all of those original maps and remastered them using high-res digital assets and used all sorts of things that Foundry is capable of, to include things like I'm walking through a temple here, I'm walking under a gargoyle, I'm walking between spider webs. There's a great example of it right there. You can walk through the cave and pass under the spider webs. Um, and we're just sort of we're stretching the software to its limits and applying all kinds of cool stuff, so that in addition to being a cool version of the beginner box on virtual tabletop, we're also trying to do things that are only possible on a virtual tabletop that previously would not have been.
That's an exciting partnership, and it's nice to have some images to look at to be an example of what people will experience with the Pathfinder beginner box for Foundry VTT.
And that's
I
just the
believe
beginning. I
there.
mean, as
Yeah,
appropriate, I
right.
suppose, because it's a beginner box. But coming up
Yes.
soon, we have a complete conversion of the Abomination Vaults adventure path, which was obviously an extremely
Yes.
popular one and is about to be re-released as a single hardcover.
Hmm.
And as you mentioned earlier on, we are about to start doing day and date releases of Foundry module conversions of our Pathfinder APs, starting with Outlaws of Alkenstar. So when the first volume of Outlaws of Alkenstar releases next Wednesday, it will also be available
Hmm.
as a Foundry module, which is just ready to install and play on anybody who already owns Foundry can just buy this
Hmm.
thing, install it, and have all of the tokens, all of the upscaled maps, everything ready to play with, and it looks super cool. I've gotten the same treatment that the
Exciting.
beginner box had.
Yeah. We'll have
And
to show
also,
off
I
some
should add
images.
one
Yes,
more
please.
thing. Also, I should have mentioned this when we were talking about the beginner box. The community, the Foundry/PF2 community on Reddit, has
Hmm.
organized an event this weekend in which people who aren't familiar with Pathfinder or aren't familiar with Foundry can get together, and we have something like 60 GMs right now running games throughout the entire
Yeah.
weekend. People can sign up, people can observe. It's a fantastic way to get your feet wet with PF2 or with Foundry, and it's all community organized. It's fantastic. So if you have any interest at all in that, by all means, head on over to the PF2 subreddit, and somebody would be, I'm sure, would be happy to point you in the right direction.
Yeah. Yeah. They've been. It's all really self initiated from the Pathfinder 2e subreddit group, and we're very grateful for the enthusiasm and expertise that they've contributed to this event. It's all theirs, and it's we're very grateful to see it. I
It
think
is.
there's
They've done an
also
amazing job.
yeah, yeah. I'm right. I'm literally as the marketing and manager, marketing and media manager at Paizo. I'm writing their coattails and grateful for it. It's a great community led initiative. Um, Sirenscape is also involved, creating
That's
music and
true.
sounds.
So
Our partner.
Sirenscape,
Mhm.
yeah. So Sirenscape, as I think a lot of people are probably already aware, creates sound sets and stuff that can be used through their app for creating sound and music for games, either mostly at the table right now. Although there are ways right now for using it in virtual tabletops as well. What they have done is essentially opened up their library to the people who are designing these Foundry modules for us, and they have allowed them to use that library to mix special custom made ambient sounds, music, triggered sounds, all sorts of cool stuff, so that they can use the vast number of assets that Sirenscape already has to enhance the experience, so that when you're walking through one of these high res maps and you're approaching, I don't know, dripping water or something, you can hear water
Mhm.
dripping. There's
That's
music that can be
exciting.
triggered when fighting starts. It's really cool and really immersive.
All right. So all of those products are going to be available for purchase on the Paizo.com on our web store. That's
That's
the
correct.
Pathfinder Beginner
The
box that's here already.
the Pathfinder beginner box already is, and something also worth
Yep.
noting about this is
Hmm.
that if you purchase any of these Foundry modules, you will have the price of that Foundry module discounted from the PDF, which, since the Foundry module is priced higher than the PDF, means the PDF is free. But it also works vice versa. So if you already own the digital PDF of the beginner box, if you purchase the PDF of one of the volumes of Outlaws of Alkenstar, you will have the price of that PDF discounted from your Foundry module as well, which means it's a fantastic bargain if you play online or with the electronic formats in general.
Excellent point. Thank you. Um, and the beginner box is already available. Outlaws of Alkenstar will release this Wednesday, and I believe the Abomination Vaults releases May 25th with the hardcover. compilation, if I remember correctly. But the rollout is ongoing, and the relationship
Hmm.
between Paizo and Foundry is established. And we thank you for your efforts in manifesting this and making this happen. We
It's
need
exciting to
to
see.
wrap up. It really is. It really is. We'll wrap up this panel now. Is with our three guests with a quick check-in about their Paizo Live spoiler and where they can be found, and then we'll take a break. Um, with Logan, is there a spoiler that you want to share?
Yeah. So I thought about this a little bit because Book of the Dead is so close. I didn't really feel like a spoiler for Book of the Dead would be something that someone couldn't find out if they went looking in the dark corners of the internet anyway. So I decided to jump ahead a little bit and talk to James Case to get a spoiler from Dark Archive, which is the
Nice.
book after Book of the Dead.
Yes.
Uh, so the Thaumaturge playtest had quite a few different implements you could choose from, and the final book introduces several more. So I'm going to spoil that one of those is the mirror implement. If you have a mirror, you can make a reflection of yourself, creating an illusory copy of yourself nearby, and then you can kind of act like you're in both those squares for until the start of your next turn. So if you want to pull a switch over on that far wall without actually moving all the way over there, you can make your mirror appear and do it. So this has obvious advantages, but also, if you're fighting two different whites, a white can stab each of you, and and it's still going to hurt. And then some of the later abilities, like at seventh level, if one of those whites stabs you, it shatters the mirror and it explodes into shards that harms the attacker. And then later on, you get some other abilities like to make yourself concealed against somebody. And I'll save the top level one for when folks see the full version. But that's how the mirror implement works.
Excellent. Thank you. And Luis, is there a spoiler that you've brought for us this evening?
Yeah, I have. Let's say I have two things actually. The first is pretty a fun thing, but with the Graveland section for Knights of Lastwall, since we wanted to be really in depth, we included some information for GMs in the form of random encounter tables. So if you want to just see, like, hey, these heroes are exploring the plains of the Gravelands, let's roll to see what they run into. It could be pretty dangerous if they roll that, but I know some people miss encounter tables, so we figured it'd be a good spot to include those there. And the other thing is, I mentioned a lot of different smaller groups and factions within it, and I think the one I really like the most of the Knights of the Last Wall is one called Starwatch Knights, which are keeping an eye on the Starstone and what's up with that thing. Tarbafon came by and tried to take it for himself. There must be some reason why he wants it beyond, like, of course, it can turn you into a god. But they're investigating it and using it to see if maybe, if we can learn something about the Starstone, we can use that to destroy Tarbafon. Or if worst comes to worst, you know, figure out a way to destroy the Starstone itself so he can't get it again. I think it's a really cool group that, leads to a lot of fun ideas for plots and campaigns.
Indeed. Great. Thank you. Andrew, you've been in the thick of things with these three separate products with Foundry. Do you? I don't know that there's anything that we've missed in terms of a spoiler. Do you have anything to add, or should we just
Not really. I mean,
sign
first of
off?
all, I should. A side comment is I'm not sure why it looks like I'm in a completely dark room. I think my camera is somehow picking up just the minimum amount of light. I'm not really sure what the deal is
Yeah.
with that, but um,
We
sure,
hear you
whatever.
loud and clear.
That's what's important. I don't think there's anything on the Pathfinder side that I have worked on that has been announced yet, but isn't out. So I
Yeah.
will briefly shed some light on my favorite thing that I'm happy that made it into the Book of the Dead, which is the focus spell that the Reanimator gets. I don't remember what level. It's toward the high end. It basically lets you say, "Oh, my party killed something. Well, now I own that thing. Now I can raise that thing as a skeleton or a zombie." Which I, in my heart, call the "Ho ho ho! Now I have an owl bear" spell. Yes, it essentially allows you
Nice.
to take something that's been killed and raise it, and it keeps its physical attacks. So it's an octopus, great. If it's an owlbear, great. If it could fly before, now it's a flying zombie. It's all yours.
That's well within the necromancer, what it feels to be a powerful necromancer. So that's really great that that's made it into the game. Thank you, Andrew. And thank you
Mhm.
all, Luis, Logan. I think we'll sign off for now. Take a break. We're now about we got a late start, and we've got a few other guests to talk to. So thank you, gentlemen, and we'll take a break for now. We'll all see all of you in just a few minutes.
Going somewhere?
I was just looking for you.
How lucky for you, then. It's quite a big price on your head.
Is the money really worth all this?
It's not about the credits. I've been looking forward to this for a long time.
I bet you have.
You're not getting the drop on the villains with sounds like that. Your game needs Sirenscape. The Sirenscape Online player has a huge library of epic sounds for any situation. Whether your players are cruising across the galaxy or blasting bounty hunters, Sirenscape brings the game to life. Epic games need epic sound. Go to Sirenscape.com to get started today.
Foundry Virtual Tabletop presents the Pathfinder Beginner Box, an amazing introduction to Pathfinder 2nd Edition like you've never seen it before. The Beginner Box walks you through everything you need to know to be a game master or player and includes a dungeon crawling adventure designed to teach you and your party Pathfinder's rules. Your players can choose from 4 iconic pre-built characters like a rogue, wizard, fighter, or cleric, one of dozens of additional characters from the system, or they can make their own from scratch. Once everyone's ready to play, you can jump into Minas Under Otari. The adventure includes meticulously upscaled versions of the original maps and a beautiful set of new scenes from Narky maps using Forgotten Adventures assets that include overhead tile support and animated lights. Improved visuals are just the beginning, and your players will be fully immersed as they delve beneath Otari with Sirenscape-provided background music for setting the scene, and ambient audio for creature sound effects, environmental effects, and more. Journal entries linked to the scene and to each other will make it easy to run the adventure, and custom styling makes it clear when to play certain tracks or run an encounter. The automation and tight rules integration of the Pathfinder 2e system makes it a breeze to run complex combat encounters even for new game masters. And once the battle is over and your players have emerged victorious, you can use loot sheets to distribute treasure from their fallen enemies. Every creature you'll face includes high-resolution portrait and token art that are pre-placed on scenes along with hidden traps and hazards just waiting to be sprung on your players. Once the menace under Otari is dealt with, think of all the other adventures you'll go on. But you may discover that what lies underneath Otari is just the beginning.
Gather your crew and prepare to embark on the journey of a lifetime as you explore the packed worlds of the Starfinder universe, taking on the role of a science fantasy hero customized to fit your playstyle. But danger lurks amongst the stars. Will you fight back with advanced weaponry and cunning tactics, or will your hero wield the devastating forces that fuse magic and technology together to alter reality? Your crew must come together if you have any hope of victory. In Starfinder, every decision drives the adventure as you build an epic saga with your friends. Bring your story to life in a game where the fate of the worlds rests on the answer to the most important question of all. What do you do? Begin your journey into the Starfinder universe today with the Starfinder Beginner Box, now available at Paizo.com, your local gaming store, and anywhere else adventure can be found.
Hello and welcome back to Paizo Live. I'm Aaron Shanks, your host, Paizo's marketing and media manager. In the previous 2 segments, we talked about Pathfinder Adventure Path Outlaws of Alkenstar with guest author Vanessa Hoskins. And then in the second segment, we talked to Logan Bonner, Andrew White, and Luis Loza about Pathfinder Book of the Dead, Pathfinder Lost Omens Knights of Lastwall, and our new partnership with Foundry VTT. Now I'm excited to bring in John Compton to talk about Starfinder Drift Crisis, the newest hardcover in the Starfinder rulebook line. Hello, John. Thanks for your patience and thanks for being here tonight.
Yeah, good to hear.
And your title is Senior Developer, if I remember correctly. Let's see if I got that right. Yes. So my understanding for folks at home is that you're really in charge of making sure that these hardcover rule books get developed. Is that right? Of course, Joe Piscini is your designer. You're the developer.
Yeah, and by and large, Joe and I have many overlapping duties. Are both working hand in hand on the starter hardcover book development. He focuses a little bit on the mechanical bits as well as some general curation of Starfish rule set. I work a little bit more on settings, but overall, there's a lot of overlap.
Great. So I think we have a little audio echo that's occurring. Hopefully we can work that out on our end, just to let you know. But we'll just keep going. Let's talk about the newest hardcover, Starfinder Drift Crisis. It's really unusual. It's unlike anything that I think Paizo has done before. Certainly anything unlike anything that Starfinder has done before. The Drift is the Starfinder's equivalent to hyperspace. And what we know so far is that it stops working. Something goes awry. And this book dives into that concept. What can you tell us about what this book is and what the Drift Crisis is, both as a book and as an event, as a concept?
Yeah, so think about some of our adventures, for example. There's a lot of, this thing is happening, but just this one place. Like, invade this planet. For the Drift Crisis, less about telling a single story, and it's more telling a huge story all the way across the galaxy. So we are looking at with this so-called drift crash, the moment Drift Crisis begins, spins to the Drift Crisis that affects the vast area, the Pact worlds, all sorts of in the vast, any of the worlds that you have made up for your homebrew setting, and basically just where that we have established in Ken so far, there's a possibility for how this drift breakage is going to impact them. So rather than providing encounter adventures in a Starfinder, like you might see in some of our adventures, these are what we call adventure seeds. These are 2, 4, or 6 page storylines that are basically saying, hey, you needed the cliff notes on how to create your own module, adventure path scenario, whatever it is, whatever scope you want to be, tied into this place and this type of story. The sorts of beats, sorts of NPCs, and the sorts of struggles, obstacles, and even sample creatures you might want to have in there to tell that compelling story, that heart of the Drift Crisis. Because no matter what story you tell for the Drift Crisis, you're not in the whole story. You're telling one piece of a huge spanning campaign.
That's exciting. Wow. So there's this element of unknown. Who knows what direction you're going to go? What's going to happen? If we look at the table of contents of the hardcover that's coming out, we've got it's only 3 chapters, but there's so much content. The first chapter looks like it really talks about the Drift Crisis itself, and the second chapter is more about adventures and these adventure seeds. And then the third chapter is a toolbox of all sorts of GM material. what can people expect out of the hardcover itself?
Yeah, so let's sort of do a quick little glance at each of these chapters. So, like chapter one, you mentioned sort of talking about the drift crisis and stuff, and this is dividing almost like these stated gazetteers, you might think of them, for various parts of our setting. So, what's happening in the Pact worlds right now that kind of gets pulled onto all the stuff that we all know is true about the world. Now the drift crisis is happening. Same same for some of the places in the past, for near space, the Slanty Star Empire, etc., etc., etc. So basically, you can take the things you already know as a foundation, and all you have to do is add a couple of little things. Suddenly, boom, drift is. Uh, so you have that in chapter one. You have a lot of information as to what the drift is, as well as what drift crisis means, and what caused it, or more specifically, might have caused it. We present these three chapters in such a way that the first chapter is really acting the player's guide to an adventure path that you might pick up. Paizo oftentimes provides free digital downloads of player's guides that are no to spoiler documents that help somebody about to start an adventure path catch up to speed. What is important to know? What sorts of things fit in well. Which I know in character. Chapter one in a way, really like that campaign guide, that player's guide, and it has almost no spoilers, and importantly, where it does even start provide some spoilers, it's providing them as one of numerous options. So there's a table, for example, of rumors in there of like rumors of what caused drift crisis. Like, some of them be true, some of them might not. Importantly, what we do with drift crisis book is, in that first chapter, we convey that any of could be true for your campaign. Provide in chapter 3 a clearer statement of, in fact, what did happen to the scenes as far as what our canon be moving forward. So if you really want to cleave to that, cool, fantastic, it's there for you. You want one of the other rumors to be the truth that your players are discovering, are solving, are responding to. You can do that. Campaign, like, have fun. These sorts of books are about reading through and find inspiration wherever it strikes. We have explicitly gone forward and said, yes, take whatever you run with it. That's chapter one. Chapter 2 is really about those adventures that I started to talk about. The 2, 4, and 6 pages. There are 20 of those, covering a huge variety of different storylines. In a previous interview, article earlier this week, we talked a little bit about how the Viscarium is trying to find an alternate drift technology, may or may not go haywire. We talked about how Absalom is receiving all these refugees. And they need to like find him for them. Well, they have all things called the ghosts of Absalom Station. They're haunted, but sure that we can get insurance to clear them. Talk about things like how there's a different sect of Aleritu, the god of magic, who has always askance technology and triumphs little drift travel. Magic could do it better. And now the technology has failed. Titans are basically saying, we told you. Technology failed. Magic solution. Burn your computer. And so, like, do you want to deal with sort of a cult response? We have that. Do you want to deal with something more like the Spectra? The Spectra are made of outsiders drift. And so if the drift is breaking, like what it mean to the equivalent angels that live there? Probably means that some of them are unhappy, and in fact, it also means that some of them kind of break in their own way. So are they seeking from your companions and your player character? Are they assuming that all mortal kind is responsible for the drift crisis? They might be right. How are you dealing with these true neutral outsiders that now could become either some of your close allies or your most enduring ends? So, like, the drift crisis opened all sorts of really fun possibilities, and the art that we have there is, I believe, tied to what we call the drift in verse storyline. Drift. Normally, every time that you travel in the drift, you tear a tiny little bit of the rest of the plane into the drift. Kind of so you have tiny bits of hell and heaven floating around. And cool, great seeds. If the drift breaks, it's possible through one of these adventure seeds, and it starts going in reverse. So instead of absorbing bits of planes, the drift starts to vomit out of planar material into the material plane. And so you get a taste of what it's to the drift because part of the maelstrom is now thrown into your backyard, and you get to deal with. So again, it's one of those things that can be wide scale of a problem you want. Are you in fact in the drift, or are you bonding to a tiny corner in your own little street level way, still a compelling story about the drift crisis?
So this doesn't, while the drift has crashed and travel through the drift is challenged, it can be spitting things out to create problems on the material plane. And you can have adventures that are completely focused on the material plane and a setting and a location that you want to explore without ever needing to go into the drift at all.
Absolutely. And one of the important things that we've done with Drift Crisis is drift travel is not totally broken. I mean, to use some game terms, it has the broken conditions, not destroyed. It is difficult to use. It is more dangerous to use. Basically, as hard to use as you, as the GM, wanted it to be your own narrative purposes. So, do you want it to just be the sort of thing that maybe the character and a few others are risking at this time, and everybody's saying, I'm going to stay home? Is it something where there's still a fair amount of drift? Is it completely borked? Your call. But we wanted to make sure that the possibility for interstellar travel still an option. So it's not 100% gone. Just hang thread.
All right. Well, I think we're going to start to wind down this segment. We've had some continued audio issues that we want to keep working on, and we're going to be talking a lot more about the drift crisis in the days to come at PaizoCon in both PaizoCon physical and PaizoCon online at the end of May, Memorial Day weekend. And so this is just the beginning of the reveal of what the drift crisis is all about. John, did you have a spoiler or that you'd like to share with people that you haven't had a chance to share yet?
So we have already announced the book that will be following Drift Crisis called Interstellar Species, which is an exploration of the various player species in Starfinder, and lots of info about them and new care options. And it's kind of no secret that we had launched a survey about years ago, asking for people species that they will learn more about. Use that to very heavily inform what we included in the book, and that included a whole bunch of answers, including some who chose one of the species that has only appeared in cards deck. Namely, we have a whole article in there about kobold now, and I'm not going to tell you how kobolds play into the Starfinder setting, but I will say that their origin story for Starfinder is something completely bonkers, and you're going to have a lot of fun with it, and it is not at all what you are going to expect. So we're really looking forward to those reveals. Interstellar Species will be coming up with 25 takes on our playable species.
Excellent. I know there are people who definitely wanted to see those species that were introduced in that card deck make it into the hardcovers, and it's nice to know that the kobolds will be amongst them. So looking forward to Interstellar Species later this year, I believe in November. Thank you, John, for spending time with us, and we can't wait to find out more about the Drift Crisis, which is an event that's going to affect all of our products for the next 12 months, from PaizoCon to PaizoCon. So we'll say goodbye for now, and when we come back, we will focus on Paizo's organized play programs, Pathfinder Society and Starfinder Society. We'll see you in a few minutes.
Long ago, our people emerged from the caves to a world covered in ash and ruled by monsters. To guide our way forward, Sister Cinder, goddess of fire, gifted us a divine artifact, a sacred lamp to cut through the darkness. For many generations, we carried this artifact across tundra, hill, and forest. Its light created a new order for all who dwelled in the realm. But when the great quake sundered the eastern lands, demons attacked. Our people were divided, and the artifact was lost. We have wandered in shadow ever since. More than 100 winters have passed since that time. Now battle drums beat in the distance, and the fires of war burn on the horizon. To survive, we must travel into the lands unknown. Hidden in these ancient plains, buried under mud and stone, is the legendary tool which will rekindle our legacy. Strive the brutal landscape of the realm of the Mammoth Lords. Find new followers to strengthen the clan. Battle mighty dinosaurs. Tame vicious megafauna. And slay monstrous beasts. Defeat those who hunt us. Prove your strength to become a master of the realm. Join the broken tusks and wield the ancient fire in the quest for the frozen flame.
Welcome to New Harmony. This recently discovered planet in the vast, currently devoid of intelligent life, has been designated as a settlement site. And with the generous backing from the likes of the Aspith Consortium, the Starfinder Society, the Xeno Wardens, and the Viscarium, that's where you come in. As administrators of your very own land charter, it'll be your responsibility to explore the lush, fertile landscape, catalog the various forms of flora and fauna, construct projects that ensure the health, safety, and prosperity of your citizens, negotiate with leaders of other charters for the benefit of all, uncover ancient ruins, and solve a mystery millennia in the making. At the end, the world of New Harmony is yours, should you survive. Horizons of the Vast is a Kingmaker and space-style adventure path for 1st to 12th level characters.
Magambia is the oldest and greatest academy of magic in the world. Here, old mage Jatimbe brought back the light of lost knowledge thousands of years ago, and his legacy still stands today. The newest initiates at the school, eager for knowledge, soon discover there's more going on at the Magic Academy than lessons and student rivalries. As years pass, the students are destined to become teachers, responsible for the Magambia's reputation around the world and beyond. They shall carve their names into the legacy of the great school, building upon the strength of thousands of graduates who have come before them. But learning never ends, and neither does the danger. The stories of these legendary heroes and their mighty foes will span the ages, rivaling even the tales of the old mage Jatimbe's 10 magic warriors, and the fate of the Magambia is destined to be in their hands. Enter a magic school like none other, with the strength of thousands adventure path.
So, you used to work for Edge Corp, huh? Taking it to the edge and all that. You were just a long hauler, shipping cargo from one planet to another for low pay, worse benefits, and the promise of a bonus that never showed up. Now, you're your own boss, looking for cargo you can buy for cheap and sell for bank. Jobs are everywhere. Absalom Station, sure, but the Viscarium too. Near space, even the vast. Get used to the drift, cause you're gonna be flying long hauls. And some of the things that live in that place, they don't like visitors. I heard Edge Corp is still after you. Something about a stolen ship? And the Golden League is after you too? You got a long list of enemies, hotshot. You better start making some friends. Cause if there's one thing I've learned in a lifetime of carrying freight, it's that every bill comes due. If you really want to be free to go where you want, do as you please, You're gonna have to settle up with these people, and revenge ain't cheap. Don't say I didn't warn you.
Hello and welcome back to Paizo Live. I'm your host, Aaron Shanks. In the previous segments tonight, we talked to Vanessa Hoskins about the Outlaws of Alkenstar adventure path that begins next Wednesday, the 27th of April. We then spoke with Logan Bonner, Luis Loza, and Andrew White about Pathfinder Book of the Dead, which also releases next Wednesday. Knights of Lastwall, Lost Omens Knights of Lastwall, which releases at the end of May, and our new partnership with Foundry VTT. Then we moved on to talk to John Compton about the new Starfinder Drift Crisis event and hardcover. You can find out more about the Drift Crisis at driftcrisis.com, where there's a landing page that features all of the products and events associated with this mega and meta event that the Starfinder team is manifesting. So now I am pleased to bring Linda Zayas Palmer onto the show, our organized play. Well, I will say she is our development manager, managing the developers who are really a part of our organized play and digital initiatives. So that means that all of those one-shots, the digital boundaries, the digital scenarios of both Pathfinder Society and Starfinder Society, all of those the team that is creating all of those wonderful products, Linda manages them. Thank you, Linda, for joining us tonight.
Thanks for having me. Oh man, have I got a lot of products to talk to you
Yeah,
about
right? So many products. As the audience can tell, we're trying to cover 2 months in 2 hours. So it's a tightly packed Paizo Live, and we got a little bit of a late start. So we're really excited about all the things we get to show you. It's sort of a precursor to PaizoCon. It's some of that same energy of look at all the stuff, look at all the stuff. I want to first talk about some of those digital products that are not organized play specific. And I believe the first one we have to talk about is an unannounced one-shot called Before the Storm, a Starfinder one-shot called Before the Storm. And it has a tie into the Drift Crisis, as I understand. Linda, what can you tell us about that?
Yeah, that's right. So we actually have 2 different digital adventures that tie into this major Drift Crisis event. Both of them give their own answers to the question, where were you when the drift crash happened? And both of them start with you experiencing a different kind of crash too. So when Before the Storm opens, your ship just gets barreled by this giant wave of drift energy into another ship. And things are not okay on that ship, not okay at all. And your communications are down, and you kind of got to figure out what's going on. This is an adventure for level 1 characters, written by former Paizo senior developer Jason Condro, and it's a great way to kick off a larger Drift Crisis themed adventure. The adventure even has specific guidance in it for how to use it to get started with the Drift Crashers adventure path. So if your group is looking to play that AP, which will be starting soon, then I highly recommend you check this out. We've also got in this Drift Crisis theme, we have Starfinder Society scenario, $4.99 A Time of Crisis, an interactive special that is for levels 1 through 6, written by Dennis Muldoon. In a time of crisis, you're flying through space, you're Starfinder agents, and you're on some kind of an archaeological mission. It's important or whatever. They haven't really explained what it's going to be. When suddenly, boom, drift crash. All your ships crash into an unknown planet. Your comms are down. You don't know where you are. And you all got to gather together, explore this unknown world, throw together a base camp, and survive, honestly. So these 2 adventures are different takes on this whole, like, there's a giant cataclysm, and then you are one of those people who was out in space, and all sorts of crazy stuff happens.
Exciting.
Yeah. So I want to say one thing about May versus kind of like May versus June adventures here for organized play. Um,
Yes, please.
for May adventures, you're going to see those debuting for the first time at PaizoCon, and to make sure that experience is new and fresh and exciting for PaizoCon folks, those adventures are going to be more generally available on June 1st. So not technically still in May, but very soon after. And if you want to get them hot on their fresh release, then check them out at PaizoCon.
Great, and there will be many, many games at PaizoCon online. So
Yes.
for those who don't know, I'll bring you up to speed. Organized Play, Pathfinder Society, and Starfinder Society are our welcome mats to all of you. And when we know you're going to fall in love with Pathfinder, you're going to fall in love with Starfinder, but where do you play it? Where do you find a game? Who do you play with? That's what Organized Play is all about. It's making sure that you have someone to play with virtually wherever or whenever you are. So there's favorite local game stores, there's conventions, and there's online play. So our PaizoCon will reflect that. We have a hybrid con, and there will be in-person physical gaming as well as online gaming. And so we welcome you to jump in and start to explore Pathfinder and Starfinder through organized play. All right, that was the welcome back speech, but we can go back to the scenarios.
Or we could talk about a bounty, because you mentioned the adventures that are digital adventures that are not scenarios. We've got another one to talk about. You've got Starfinder Bounty: A Green Place. This is a level 1 adventure by Aaron Roberts. Like the other bounties, it's a short adventure. It's supposed to take about an hour and a half to play. This adventure takes place on the planet Verces. A power plant has suddenly gone offline, casting much of the city of Thamal into darkness. So when you start off this adventure, you know 2 things. Number 1, drone photographs of the power plant show a strange overgrowth of foliage emerging from the building. And number 2, nobody who's been sent to investigate this place has returned. So it's up to you to get to the bottom of this mystery and restore light to the city.
Exciting. Nice way to jump into Starfinder at first level with just some mystery to be solved. That's great. Now this is our how many bounties do we have? How many Starfinder bounties do we have? I want to say this is number 3.
I believe this is our 3rd.
Yeah, that sounds right. So if you've got a first level character, I don't think these bounties are bite sized. They last about an hour of play, hour and a half, 90 minutes. So you can string several of them together to create a bounty hunter sort of Saturday, if you want to.
Yeah, and unlike scenarios, bounties don't assume that your characters are members of the Starfinder Society. It's just, hey, you guys are people who are on this planet, and you're the kind of people who, when somebody says, there's a problem, help, you say, okay, I like adventure. And that's pretty much all of it that needs to be true about you.
Yeah. Just the basic idea is that you're here to lean in and be heroes.
Mm-hmm.
That's great. And so now we can talk about the Starfinder scenarios that are coming up. I believe what's happening is we're wrapping up one season and starting a new one at PaizoCon. So viewers will see a visual difference in those scenarios based on a season.
Yes, that's right. So our conclusion to year 4, the year of the Data Scourge, is written by Jenny Jarzowski, who is the architect of the Data Scourge plot as a whole. So in this conclusion, the Data Scourge, for a bit of context, it was this cataclysm where there was this virus that was introduced into all sorts of computer systems throughout Absalom Station and beyond that caused all sorts of havoc, including having robots go haywire and attack people. And you finally figured out who's responsible, and you're gearing up to put a stop to the attack. But the enemy isn't going to go down easily, right? The architect's not going to go down easily. So this epic conclusion to year 4 starts with a UFO attacking Absalom Station. And by UFO, I mean in the knowledge section, kind of at the beginning of the adventure, there's a line there that says, no matter what you roll, you're sure of one thing: you've never seen anything like this before. There's this like completely ridiculous new technology ship that's coming in and attacking Absalom Station. And Absalom Station needs your help. And it starts there. And another thing that I really like about this scenario is that and it culminates in a multi-stage boss fight. You know, like those classic video game boss fights where, you know, you defeat the enemy and then they shift into a new form and you got to defeat them again, and they shift into a new form and they're more powerful and they've got
Nice.
different abilities. You've got like an epic multi-stage boss fight that caps this one out. So you really need to make sure that this boss stays down and stays down for good. And if you've been playing the Year of the Data Scourge and you know how you know how sneaky and pernicious this villain is, then you might guess why you need to do something like that to finish them off for good.
Nice. Be careful with those resources as you go through each combat. Make sure you've saved some.
Oh
That's
yes,
great.
oh yes. Well, you're level 5 to 8. You probably got some good tricks up your sleeve.
Yeah, exactly. And teamwork. Never forget teamwork and
Yes.
cooperation.
Well,
All right, that
teamwork and
sounds like an
cooperation.
exciting.
Yeah,
Yes.
it's going to serve you well.
So that sounds like an epic finale for that season. What's the next step?
The next step is to begin the new season, the Year of Redemption's Rise. Now, we talked about this this season on our last Paizo Live, so if you want to have a longer overview of what's going on with that, I recommend checking out our last Paizo Live or the blog about it on Paizo.com, or some interviews, which I'll plug at the end of this episode, this end of this segment. But the Year of Redemption's Rise is basically a time when well, you'll learn a lot about it if you play this particular scenario. This scenario introduces the leaders of 3 new or newly prominent factions: the Cognates, who think that there is an excessive reliance on technology and that agents should explore other options such as magical and analog solutions; the Advocates, who basically advocate like people coming together and helping each other and things like that. And then there's also the Manifold Host, which was a minor faction that was really hard to get into. You had to have like the special boon from this one convention and stuff like that. But now it's going to be open up to everybody, which is looking to bring in a lot of diverse people from all over the galaxies to join in the Starfinder Society. And the leaders of each of these factions has a different task for you to do around the Lore Spire complex. This adventure has a good mix of combat and social encounters, and I was thinking about what else to say for it. There's some really funny stuff in this adventure, but it's better if you see it yourself. I don't want to spoil it. So in the Year of Redemption's Rise, though, based on the fact that there was the Data Scourge, and now we've got the Drift Crisis coming in, and all of this, and there's a lot, and some of the issues in previous seasons, there's suspicion and there's mistrust, and you get to see some of that bubbling up here in the Year of Redemption Rise's intro, and then throughout the season, the rest of the season's really going to focus more on coming together to affect positive change. But as with any situation where you're looking to reform things, there are people who like the status quo, and you're going to see a lot of oppositionary forces, including a secret criminal organization within the Starfinder Society that are going to be rising up to fight against you. But in terms of the criminals within Starfinder Society, and I mentioned that there were some that were buried in the Starfinder's Society's past. Perfect example of that is in this next scenario, Starfinder's scenario, Road to Reconciliation, which is a level 3 to 6 scenario by Paizo editor Shay Snow. This scenario, the Starfinder Society has one of those famous heroes from their early days, a venture captain who's long been held up as a shining example of diplomacy and scholarship. Everybody wants to be like them. You know, you put up the poster, that kind of thing. Except she was actually a terrible person. who lied, cheated, and stole her way to fame. And the reason that she's remembered fondly is that she had a habit of silencing anyone who could question her story. So um, one of her transgressions involves stealing a sacred relic from the Strix of Verces and making bad things happen to the witnesses. So in this scenario, the PCs are returning that relic and proving the goodwill of the Starfinder Society by passing a variety of challenges and reclaiming a site that had been lost to dangerous monsters, and really fixing that issue that had been festering for centuries. It's like nobody knew that that was a problem because the record said everything was fine, and then Salita was digging into things and was like, oh, this is a real problem.
Thank you. That's going to be a
And
great addition. And
yeah,
is there another scenario after that?
yes, there is. Well, because we've got these three scenarios are for the launch of the Year of Redemption's Rise at PaizoCon. So as usual, we're starting
Yes.
with a 3-scenario bundle. This is our high-level one. We've got Starfinder Society scenario, Combatants Concerto, Fugue of the Traitor. This is a level 7 to 10 scenario written by Allison Kaib. And this continues the ongoing story of the Combatants Concerto storyline, which started with scenario 3-11 into the Viscarium, and scenario 4-06, Combatants Concerto Prelude to Revolution. It's cool to play those scenarios first. They'll give you some additional context. Characters in the story will respond to the fact that they saw you back then. But you don't have to. Like always for these sorts of story arcs, you can jump right in. So this story is about the Pulonis Liberation Front, which is an organization that seeks to return the planet that's most commonly known as Vest 6 to rule by the Patra who are from the planet rather than the Vescarium. While the aims of most of the freedom fighters are noble, the organization also has its share of extremists who believe that the ends justify just about any means, including violence against civilians and bystanders. So, this is one of those missions where you've got 3 stacked missions going on.
Wow.
You are the famous pop star and PLF leader Miyu has asked you to sniff out a traitor in the group's highest ranks. So, on the first point, you've got your cover mission, the thing that the Viscarium thinks you're doing, which is coming in to investigate this super deadly storm known as the Shriek. So you got to make sure you do that mission, because that's what the Viscarium thinks you're doing. Then you've got your mission number 2, which is the thing that the most of the people in the PLF think you're doing, which is helping them find and claim a new base that is a super dangerous location. And then you've got your mission number 3. While doing those first 2 missions, also find a traitor. So there's a lot that's going on in this mission. A lot of you got a lot of intrigue. You got a lot of super dangerous stuff. And this scenario is also the one we've teased on past Paizo Lives that ends with a giant mech battle.
Nice. Getting mechs into the adventures. That's the great thing that all these digital adventures have the ability to implement new features faster than our print adventures. So if you really want to use some of the newest rules that Paizo has created, Pathfinder and Starfinder societies are one of the ways to do that. It's exciting, great stuff. Then we have Pathfinder Society, and what's coming up there?
So we've got 2 scenarios coming out in April. The first is A Tomb Between Worlds, a level 5 to 8 adventure by Jacob W. Michaels. So, if you've got a real life location, you might say that you've got a rat problem in the basement or a roach problem in the basement. But Pathfinder Society lodges have bigger issues at play, particularly in year 3, which isn't called the Year of Shattered Sanctuaries for no reason. It's a time when your bases are running into some serious problems. So, if you played scenario 309, The Secluded Siege, in that adventure, you were dealing with hordes of undead that were pouring out of the basement of Sothis, of the Sothis Lodge in Osirian.
Yes.
And,
yes.
Yeah, at the end of that adventure, the heroes discovered that there was a big, giant, suspicious portal in the basement that seemed to be the source of the undead. And then the adventure stopped.
Yeah.
So, if you were wondering, what's the deal with that portal? Here you go. A Tomb Between Worlds. Now it's time to go through that portal. Well,
Yeah.
you're not going to be the first to go through the portal, but in the classic story twist of why you bring higher level people in, no one else has returned. So now you got to go in. As the name suggests, this is a really unusual location. It's not exactly of this world, but it's also not exactly not of this world. It's kind of weirdly in between, and you're going to get to move back and forth in an interesting way that has interesting implications for the way that the whole scenario structure works.
That sounds innovative and creative. Nice. And yeah, you don't want to be a first level character going through that portal.
That's why it's 5 to 8.
Yeah. Yeah. Okay, that's intriguing. That's intriguing. I think is Guardians Covenant the next scenario?
Yes, that's right, and that's also
April?
an April scenario. This is a level 3 to
Mm-hmm.
6 adventure by Christopher Wasco. And this is another chance to go to Arcadia. I know people are always looking for opportunities to go to
Yeah.
Arcadia.
Yes.
So, in some past Pathfinder Society scenarios, PCs were able to establish a bit of a foothold in Port Valen, getting locals to agree to having them have a lodge and decide where they wanted to have that lodge. But now they're looking for. But the trouble with Arcadia is that, like, if you're on a Vistan or Garoon, then you've got a months long and dangerous and harrowing sea voyage to get over to Arcadia. And the Pathfinder Society has this really awesome portal network called the Maze of the Open Road that lets them connect a lot of different locations. And they
Yes.
really like to connect that network to Arcadia so that traveling to Arcadia from the Grand Lodge is like something that takes a few minutes as opposed to something that takes months and months of dangerous travel.
Yeah.
But you don't want to just be like, "Oh, hi, I'm going to create a portal in your city." Deal with it, right? You want to make sure that the people in the area where you're going to create the portal are cool with it. And you also want
Yes.
to make sure that that portal is going to be stable and not have any weird stuff going on with it. So, what happens here is that the society has been doing their research, and they found a being who's known as the Guardian of the Forest of
Mm-hmm.
Trials. And this Guardian agreed to open a portal and to keep it open as long as heroes from the Pathfinder Society regularly perform heroic deeds in and around the forest. And you are one such group of heroes. And by you are one such group of heroes, this is a repeatable adventure. So you can play it as many times as
Ooh.
you want. It's got variable elements. There's different missions, more than you can do in a single playthrough. It's 4 out of 6, and even among those missions, there's different NPCs you can interact with, different little twists on the monsters and things like that. So this is a great one for a level 3 to 6 repeatable, for if you want to have that content that you can keep coming back to.
Yeah. Repeatable and in Arcadia. Too popular,
Yes,
you can go back time and time again. That'll be popular.
for sure. There's a lot of really great NPCs in this. There's one that's like, oh man, you only get to meet one of those 4 NPCs. It's like, well, I guess you should play it again.
Yes, you should. That's terrific. All right. Well, then I think there's a couple of May releases. Although these aren't May releases as much as they're June 1st releases.
We got one more April, Grim Tidings. So
Oh,
this is
yes.
a level 3 bounty, one of our first level 3 bounties by Kat Evans. So a fair number of our bounties have been more lighthearted, oh yeah, here's a festive holiday thing or that kind of thing. But short adventure doesn't necessarily mean lighthearted. This one takes a darker turn. It takes you to a grim hamlet in frigid Irisen that is under attack from a mysterious monster in the woods. And a lot of people have met grisly ends. So, in this adventure, the question is, can your characters put a stop to the murders, or will the bloody snow and frozen trees be the last thing they ever see?
All right, not first level, but not easy.
Yes, exactly. Not really a first level adventure, but you're level 3 now. You can explore
Right.
things that are a little more dangerous. Things that could be the monster that goes bump in the night or bump in the blizzard, as it were, in this scenario.
Yeah. Good spooky one.
Yes.
All right, and then the next one May 25th?
Yes, this is
or
one of
June
those May
1st?
that's technically June 1st if you're not at PaizoCon ones. This is
Uh-huh.
Cavern of the Sundered Song. This is the first level 9 to 12 scenario for Pathfinder Society 2nd Edition. So your first chance to
Nice.
play those level 11 characters. It is written by Kate Baker. So this scenario starts off with there's kind of been an ongoing feud that is very confusing to everyone else around the Grand Lodge. The gnome scroll master Efeflin Wist, who speaks only in ancient songs and rhymes, and then Creighton Shane, the enigmatic master of scrolls, who also is kind of seems to be off like contemplating flowers or things like that. And you think, hey, these are eclectic people who like books. They probably get along, right?
Right.
No, they don't.
Oh dear.
Creighton Shane avoids her at all costs, will leave the room immediately if she's mentioned, and will never explain why. So these two clearly share some history, but nobody knows what's up. Well, that is until this adventure. If Eflin takes off through a mysterious portal opens, if Eflin takes off through it, then Creighton follows after her, and nobody explains what's going on, and they don't come back, and people are just like, what is even going on here? These two are important people in the society, and they've just disappeared, and no one knows what's going on. So you are the team of very experienced Pathfinders who come through, and you're able to uncover some lost secrets of the Pathfinder Society's past, and you also have a really interesting brush with powerful supernatural forces of a type that I don't think we've ever done in organized play.
Okay. Intriguing. I don't know if I have a favorite yet. They're all I'll have to play them all. Interesting. So this is the first. Yes, right. High level Pathfinder 2nd Edition scenario. That's what makes this one particularly notable. That's exciting. And just the plot itself sounds intriguing, perplexing, exciting. Thank you for that whirlwind. We have a lot that's coming out from your team, the digital team, the one shots, the bounties, the scenarios, and it's really, really great to see all that. And folks, these are like a few bucks. I mean, they're very affordable. So if you're looking for both quantity and quality, I highly suggest you check these out. I think we've explored some amazing products today. Are there any? Is there a spoiler or any other thing that you want to reveal before we wrap it up tonight?
So I mostly wove spoilers into those adventures by giving some more detail in several of them than you would find on their product pages. But I might just do a quick recap / forward look at where you can find some announcements, because we've been Jessica Catalan and I did a bit of a media tour for Year of Redemption's Rise. So for Year of Redemption's Rise, all of these there's blogs on Paizo.com. But for Year of Redemption's Rise, check out last month's Paizo Live. For the new Cognates faction, check out No Direction Beyond at nodirectionpodcast.com for an interview with Alice Agunas and Vanessa Hoskins, who you saw earlier on this show. For the Advocates faction, we had an interview that was posted on EN World at enworld.org. For the Manifold Host faction, that's not up just yet, but we have recorded 2 interviews with Cosmic Crit, which will be premiering at CritterCon next weekend, April 29th through May 1st. So you can check it out over there at cosmiccrit.com.
That's a spoiler. Excellent.
So that's our Starfinder announcements. As for the new Pathfinder Society year, the announcement is coming soon. PaizoCon will be when we say what this year is. We've got the art. We've got the first scenarios coming through. It is awesome. I'm looking forward to telling you about it. So you'll see the first announcements at PaizoCon. You'll see, you can also check out the Organized Play Twitter at Paizo Organized Play for more information. And the Organized Play online Discord server, which is a great place to find games, pfschat.com to join up with those folks. And of course, Paizo Live. So those are 3 places to check out new information after PaizoCon about the year of which I can't yet announce, but I very much look forward to talking about. And of course, we will be posting more stuff on the blogs on Paizo.com.
Thank you. That's great. That's a great summary. So much to look forward to with Pathfinder and Starfinder societies and PaizoCon. So thank you very much, Linda. We'll let you go this evening. We ran long, and we very much appreciate you sticking around. We saved the best for last. Thanks, and we'll see you again soon.
Thank you. Bye, everybody.
All right, everyone. So I'm just going to say thank you all for joining us, and we have a lot of accessories and maps and cards that I didn't get a chance to talk about tonight. But you'll find it all on Paizo.com. Maybe go to the new releases or the release schedule at the footer and just see all the products that are coming your way in the next few months. And make sure you join us for PaizoCon at the end of May, Memorial Day weekend. Those dates are May 27th, 28th, and 29th. More details will be released in the days to come, but it's really going to be a hybrid event where you can continue to enjoy all the digital online events that you've come to know and love in the last 2 years as we've been working through the pandemic. Plus, there'll be a nice physical convention for those who are able to make it. Thank you all for joining us tonight. You can find us at Paizo.com, on Twitch, on Twitter, on Facebook, and Instagram, and on YouTube. And we'll see you again. We'll see you at PaizoCon, and the next Paizo Live will be June 24th, Friday, June 24th. So until then, adventures ahead.